Let's see, we have Randy, Daniel, we have Sharon, uh, Mr. Bueno, Batino, and Hofmeister as well. Very good. All right, 7:02. That definitely we should start the meeting. All right. How's everybody's doing? I hope you all had a great day today because we're going to have a great meeting. All right. All right. I think we are ready to call the meeting to order since it's 7:02. All right. All right. Let's call the meeting to order. Hello, everyone. Uh, Welcome to the Youth and Education Committee. I want to thank everyone for being here
in housing.
and making all this meeting possible. Uh, Before we start, I need to let you know that unfortunately one of our colleagues or the panelists, Jamie Polowish, unfortunately there was some unforeseen circumstances that prevented her from being here, and that's actually sad news. But sometimes we don't have control of our the circumstances that we found ourselves in. So let's proceed with our meeting, and the meeting is being called at 7:03 p.m. and today is November 9. Again, welcome to the Youth and Education Committee. This is an event in collaboration with the Housing and Human Services Committee. And I really and deeply wanted to thank each and all of you for making the time to join this important conversation and perhaps this important meeting. I would like to proceed and allowing my colleagues, committee members of the Youth and Education Committee to introduce themselves for the records. So can you please identify yourself, members?
Good evening. I'm Jonathan, member of Youth and
Education Committee. Yes. Next member, please.
Gabriela Estrella. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you. Next member. Do we have any other member?
Yeah, hi, this is Paradise. I'm a part of the Youth and Education.
Paradise, our baby. Thank you so much, Paradise. Just a younger member in our committee. Thank you. So, and who else we have? Well, I know sometimes it happened that members not necessarily click on the right link. I'm going to ask our technicians. So if there is anyone like Ali Perez, Christina Riches, so they can promote on the panel, please. Chanel?
Yes.
Yes, appreciate it. Yes. Ariel, I think it's Guillermo Perez. Also, Christina Riches. We may also have Maria Luna. Please promote them, and we should have as well Waldi. I know, unfortunately, which is our assistant chair, I won't be able to join us. He had unfortunately a bicycle accident this afternoon, so I'm really sorry. Okay. So, all right. Anybody else? All right.
Were we doing introductions? I'm not sure. I just stepped in.
Yes, we will get to you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, because you said anybody else. I wasn't sure what the call was for.
We will get to you. Thank you. So now, since I don't see any other members of this committee, I would like to turn this introduction to my colleague, Ariel Miranda, who is the chairman of the chair of the housing and health. Housing and Human Services Committee. Ariel, so you would like to introduce your members as well?
Yes. Hi, everyone. So yes, I'm Mario Miranda. I'm the chair of the Housing and Human Services Committee. I'm thankful to be here joining you all today for this town hall. And yes, I'd like to allow my committee members as well to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Aisha Ogilvy, member of the Housing and Human Services Committee.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Leo Jimenez, member of the Housing and Human Services Committee as well.
Hi, everyone. This is Era Santiago. I'm also a member of the Housing and Human Services Committee.
All right. Anybody else from your side?
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Marielle Ali, and I'm also a member of the Housing and Human Services Committee.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? All right. So then
if I may, I'm Marshall Vanderpool. I'm a public member of the Housing and Human Services Committee, and I'm the first vice president of Dyckman Resident Association, Dyckman Houses.
Thank you.
I believe we have Bruce there.
Yeah, I was muted. Bruce Robertson, also on Ariel's committee, and pleased to be here tonight. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Ariel, you want to encourage anybody else from your sides as well? So maybe you want to repeat?
I think everyone on my committee who's here should have gone. If now is, yeah, I think that's everyone here.
This is it in your side then?
I'm sorry? Yeah.
Okay, so, okay, yes. I want to reiterate, first of all, my appreciation, and not a simple appreciation, but my deepest appreciation for our panel, members of the panels, that they are with us tonight, volunteer their time, their wisdom. And I really wanted to say thank you so much, very much. In a few more minutes, I really wanted to share some details in terms of revealing your names and so forth. But you know what? Maybe I should just go ahead and do that just right now, so and not leave it for later. So, but yes, I wanted to say thank you to Beth Hopmeister, who is a representative from the Legal Aid Society. She's an attorney. We're going to hear more from her. So, Ms. Hostemer, thank you so much for joining us. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
It's fine. You can just call me Beth.
Oh,
my last name's really hard.
Well, as you already have noticed, English is not necessarily my first language, and sometimes we encounter it a little bit of challenge. But I promise you that I'm trying my best to pronounce your name, which is one of the most important things to ourselves and so personal, correctly. So I also wanted to welcome and thank you, Blanca Batino, who is actually retired principal. She's an icon in our community, and she's been in the education path for decades. So we will hear more from her later on. Ms. Batino, thank you so much for joining us. I also want to welcome Daniel Farrell. He's the Senior Vice President from the Help US. Mr. Farrell, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and you're welcome. And then I would like to proceed with Mr. Randy Scott. He is actually Assistant Commissioner and from the Department of DYCD, Youth and Community Development. I don't want to disclose the entitled title because this is something so sweet to me and special, but I want them to specifically later on when they will have the opportunity, so you will hear from them. So thank you and welcome, Mr. Scott.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, but not least, I wanted to welcome also and say thank you so much to Sharon G. Kim, who is actually the program manager at the Uptown Hub. Thank you so very much, Ms. Kim. And I wanted to say this is our second event, which is we call it part 2 for the homelessness and mental health youth crisis, in particular in this time for COVID-19, which is a special, time or period that we are all experiencing in our life. So welcome all and thank you so much. Allow me just to allow some of my members, new members that actually just pops in the screen. We have Glenys, you want to introduce yourself, and Christina as well, please.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Glenys Aquino Gill. I'm a member of the Youth and Education Committee.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. My name is Christina Richez, and I am a member of the Youth and Education and Small Business Committee, and I'm really excited about tonight. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Guillermo, you would like to introduce yourself as well, please? Guillermo, can you unmute yourself, please? Guillermo Perez, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Guillermo Perez Ali, and I'm a public member of the community board at the Youth and Education Committee. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you all again. So let's go on a very important phase of this agenda that I think is basically at the core of this entitled discussion. Let's discuss our purpose for all of us to be together in this evening. So I wanted to say that there are several reasons why we are meeting. So, and before I go into those details, I wanted to share with you that this is not the first time, of course, that we got together to discuss this problems of homelessness and mental health in our community, the crisis that the city in general, is facing. So, and what the community board has done so far is basically call upon those members of the panel that actually joined us on the first time. And I can't thank them enough again for coming around this time when, and especially in this special time that we are experiencing, as a community. So here are some of the things that I wanted to, or the objective that I wanted to discuss it with you. So we're going to hopefully learn today and hearing from, your expertise. You're going to be describing the existing crisis during this pandemic. I also hope that you will be able to spotlight programs, resources, and leadership efforts, in this, during this time. And yes, of course, we hope to provide an opportunity to the community, not only for District 6, but the entire New York City, because remember, this is something that is being in real estate and you too, as we are speaking right now. And people can go and access this and look at this conversation later on. So yes, we hope to provide an opportunity for the community, like CBOs as well, and healthcare providers to learn and discuss critical needs and a strategy to support our youth living under these terrible conditions or circumstances, I should say. Now, this is at the core, at the center of this discussion. And before we do this, please allow me and help me to welcome our chairman of the board, who actually may have few words to share with you. Mr. Chairman, Eleazar Bueno, would you have please join us and say a few words and help me to welcome, our team, our panelists?
Hi, thank you, Faye. Thank you for the invite. Thanks to each and every one of the 43 participants on this panel. And I'm sure that you guys already know that homelessness and mental health are serious problems. Sometimes, for some of us, because we're lucky enough to just stumble upon some of these issues, but to some of us, it's a real issue, especially in communities like ours, which are disproportionately black and brown populated. There's a lot of distress in our community. And thank you to the panelists for coming in and providing some light and trying to help us, guide us, and understand how to best mitigate these problems and these issues. The importance of this meeting tonight, I am sure that each and every one of us within their circle of friends is to spread the word and start a conversation. And I think Faye and Ariel did a tremendous job at putting this together, and of course each and every member who have contributed to make this possible. And again, I like to stress the fact that to some of us, the homelessness and mental issues are more directly impactful than others. So hopefully our takeaway will be that we all take this as serious as possible, and come up with some guidance and some solutions that we can later on discuss on another chapter of this story. Thank you, Faye, again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's really a pleasure, having you. And I deeply appreciated, the fact that you took the time to join us and share a few words on this important event. So I also wanted to reiterate my appreciation for the members of this panel. And I wanted to, in that note, I should say that I would like to introduce again, and in the next phase of this agenda, to my colleague, Mr. Ariel Miranda, who is the chair of the Housing and Human Services Committee. As you can see, or what you should expect from this event is, or from this discussion, he is going to be moderating our conversation. And I think at this point, I am ready and willing to conceal him the floor so he may continue with the moderating this event. Mr. Miranda, thank you again for your willingness of your committee, to join us. So the floor is yours, sir.
So again, thank you so much. I cannot say enough just what it means to me to specifically be co-moderating this event today. Thank you again for everyone who has joined us to be here and discuss this matter. To begin, what I would like to do is give each of our panelists now about roughly between 1 to 2 minutes each to just give us a brief background about yourselves and let us know what about the work you've been doing that you really have been engaging with throughout these past few months now.
So, and of course, I believe that you were referring to the panel. I understood, yes.
Yes, for our panelists.
So, well, if we are going on the order of the agenda, perhaps we may have Ms. Hoffmeister first introducing herself, yes?
Sure. Thanks so much, everyone, and for having us. Some of us on the panel know each other pretty well because we work together, so it's nice to see everyone kind of in the evening in a different setting. But my name is Beth Hoffmeister. I work at the Legal Aid Society in our Homeless Rights Project. As everyone knows, legal aid is huge. One of my colleagues that I know is on here as well, who works in our housing practice, but we do a lot of different things from criminal defense to immigration, housing, health law, employment. We represent children in family court. And then there are projects like mine, which are relatively small, but our job is to help individuals and families who are running into kind of issues related to getting into shelter or staying in shelter or staying there safely. We also work on policy kind of issues as they come up, including legislation at the city council and in the state level as well. And we also do sometimes bring lawsuits on behalf of, usually class actions on behalf of large groups of people to make changes to how some of the city and state and other government agencies are implementing the services for homeless families and individuals. So thanks again for having me here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And can I have Blanca introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Blanca Batino, and I am an educator, and I have been working in Washington Heights for approximately 40 years out of my 47 years as an educator. I have been a retired principal and as well as an RTI specialist at another school. And presently I am working to support the social emotional learning through training through Ethics in Education Network at different agencies. I am an advocate and a lover of our community. I believe in its resiliency, and I am always ready and able to state whatever needs to be done in order to help our community move on.
Wonderful.
Thank you. And next, can I have Daniel?
Hi, thank you everyone, and thanks for having me on the panel. I'm a Senior Vice President at Help USA. We're a national nonprofit provider of homeless and housing services. Our largest footprint, although is in New York City, about 80%. We run homeless shelters, about 16 of them in the city, homeless prevention programs, permanent support, and domestic violence programs. We also work closely with Legal Aid and LSNY, LSNY, Legal Services of New York, especially in our homeless prevention programs, home base, specifically in the Bronx. I have a portfolio of about 20 programs, and near and dear to my heart is our homeless prevention and aftercare portfolio. Our number one job, of course, is to prevent homelessness. And when it does end for our clients, is to make sure it doesn't reoccur. But while people are experiencing homelessness at one of our sites, is to make sure that they're comfortable, they're safe, and that there's a quick pathway out of homelessness. So thanks again, everyone.
Thank you. Ariel?
Sorry, I just realized I did not have the mute button on. Thank you so much. May we have Randy introduce themselves? Randy, are you there?
Yeah, Randy's there. Randy? Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to say it's a pleasure to be here again. I participated in this panel a few years ago, so it's always good to come back and share with you some updates that have occurred since then. But my name is Randy Scott. I am the Assistant Commissioner for Vulnerable and Special Needs Youth with the Department of Youth and Community Development. I've been in this role for a little bit over 10 years. However, I've been in the field of social services for over 20 plus years. You know, it's with experience in administration, homelessness, child welfare, domestic violence, and so on, especially working with city, state, and federal governments. With the role that I play at DYCD, I oversee the Runaway and Homeless Youth Division, which is about 60 contracted sites within the New York City region, which includes street outreach, drop-in centers, both daytime and 24 hours, as well as short and long-term residential programs. So that's basically a little snapshot, and I look forward to giving you more information as we move throughout the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
And can I also have Sharon introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Really glad to be with everyone in this space once again. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sharon Kim, and I direct the Uptown Hub, which is a youth opportunity hub initiative that is funded by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and is currently housed at New York Presbyterian Hospital. So we had launched back in 2017 as a youth development and drop-in center for 14 to 24-year-olds, where our young people can connect to different resources as well as opportunities such as educational support, employment readiness, health services, and other recreational activities. So we provide that wraparound support to our young people actually through a network of existing youth providers that are in the community, particularly uptown. And they work alongside our internal hub staff, which is comprised of program staff, psychologists, as well as youth advocates who actually provide individualized mentorship and case management to all of our hub members. And so definitely in these last few years, and certainly with the pandemic, we have seen the growing issue of homelessness as it relates to mental health with our youth population. So I'm very much looking forward to this conversation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So to get ourselves, I guess, just a bit more acclimated to the environment that we're working with, what I wanted to start with on my end right now is to go through a bit of the facts regarding what's happened with youth homelessness, as well as really a mental health crisis that's been going through, been really just dealing with a lot of issues throughout these past few months. I collected quite a bit of data that you'll hear from me now that really captures information collected from the Shelter Census reports, the New York City Department of Homeless Services, the Human Resources Administration, NISTAT, American Community Survey, the U.S. Census Bureau, the Homeless Outreach Population Estimate, the New York City Furman Center, the Bowery Mission, the Coalition for the Homeless, the City Council, and the New York Times. So, quite a bit. So to begin, homelessness in New York City has reached the highest levels since the Great Depression of the 1930s. And the largest demographic within the population that are homeless is children. As a result, the number of students that are homeless has increased nearly 70% over the last decade, according to the Department of Education. Over the course of the city fiscal year 2019, 132,660 different children, men, and women slept in the New York City shelter system. This includes over 44,300 New York City children. In August of 2020, there were 57,660 homeless people, including 12,866 homeless families with 19,006 homeless children sleeping each night in the New York City shelter system. There's many reasons for families to experience homelessness, but in most cases, multiple factors are involved. Common ones include mental illness, substance abuse, untreated medical issues, traumatic events, and difficulty sustaining employment. However, the most immediate factors for many are the lack of affordable housing, eviction, doubled up or severely overcrowded housing, domestic violence, job loss, and hazardous conditions. Oftentimes, PATH, the Prevention, Assistance, and Temporary Housing Centers, are where homeless families in New York City go to apply for shelter, and where they also go to reapply if they are initially found ineligible or if they are, quote, logged out, essentially after missing check-in at their shelter for 2 nights in a row. In order to qualify to be placed in a shelter, a family must document all residences from the past 2 years and prove to pass fraud investigators that they cannot return to any of them. If families become homeless because of domestic violence, they have to provide each police report and restraining order when they first go to PATH centers. In 2018, only 40% of families who applied for shelter at PATH met all requirements and gained placement. When arriving at PATH, families too often wait long hours to potentially receive a housing assignment by midnight or later, and are required to enter with their children present, which often forces children to miss school. To note here, last year, 43% of the city's homeless students were chronically absent, which is defined as missing 10% or more of the school year. If families don't receive an assignment by midnight at PATH centers, they're bused to a temporary overnight placement for some sleep and then return to PATH the following day to continue awaiting their assignment. The Department of Homeless Services says when giving out assignments, it takes into account the neighborhood where its youngest child will attend school in its placements. However, only 50% of city shelter placements in 2019 were in the same borough. This is partly because the vacancy rates in shelters are so low that it is hard to make precise placements. In addition, 40% of all homeless families are fleeing domestic violence and are not supposed to be placed in a shelter in the same borough. At the end of last year, New York City reported that 114,000 school-aged children met a federal statute known as the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act's definition of homelessness, which essentially entails that they're lacking a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. In New York City in 2015 to 2016, only 15% of 3rd to 8th grade students living in shelters specifically read proficiently, and only 12% met state requirements in math. Only 62% of students who are homeless graduated from high school last year in comparison to 77% citywide. Research from the University of Chicago showed that the inability to graduate from high school or earn an equivalency diploma increased the chances of experiencing homelessness of young adults by 4.5 times. The Coalition for the Homeless State of the Homeless 2020 report shows that the state of New York has been failing to address homelessness, most disturbingly by allowing thousands of individuals to be released from hospitals and jails directly to shelters. In 2018, more than 3,400 individuals were released from state prisons directly to shelters in New York City. Between 2015 and 2018, more than 15,000 such individuals were sent to city shelters by the state. In March of 2020, single adults between the ages of 18 to 29 made up 16% of single adults sleeping in New York City shelters, the majority of whom had entered shelter after being released from state prison. Moreover, the state did not adequately address housing needs as psychiatric centers like that of the Allen Pavilion that is close by and local here were closed, leaving many vulnerable people to homelessness. And shockingly, 1 in every 100 babies born in New York City last year was brought home from the hospital to a shelter. Furthermore, the public assistance shelter allowance by the state has been historically inadequate, leaving those who are homeless or at risk of homelessness without permanent affordable housing options. Family homelessness, like homelessness among single adults, disproportionately impacts people of color. Among family heads of households, 55% identify as Black, non-Hispanic, and 38% identify as Hispanic. Just 4% of family heads of household identify as white, compared with 32% of the New York City population. Altogether, at least 94% of families in New York City shelters are headed by people of color. The city is required by law to provide shelter to everyone who needs it, and to accommodate this, they have been relying on finding options such as hotels for some time now. Since the pandemic hit, thousands more people have gone into hotels to reduce the spread of the virus in dormitory-style shelters, and homeless advocacy groups have been pushing to expand the program further, although previously, before the pandemic, many had been pushing to stop this practice, given the greater costs associated with the usage of hotels. The Coalition for the Homeless estimates keeping a family in their homes saves taxpayers $68,422 per year in shelter costs. 60% of New Yorkers say they don't have enough emergency savings to cover at least 3 months' worth of expenses like food and rent, while nearly 20% of New York City residents have already lived below the poverty line, earning less than $24,300 for a family of 4. This was back in March of this year that data was found. And lastly, I'll just make 2 more points. According to data compiled by the New York City, by the New York University Furman Center, 239,000 very low-income renter households are at high risk of becoming homeless. According to Christine Quinn of WIN, and also our former city council speaker, who runs now 11 family shelters in the city, the ending of the current eviction moratorium could be catastrophic if even a small fraction of the expected families who will begin entering shelters come to them. So clearly this is quite a bit of information. It sets really a background that I think it's incredibly important to understand what's going to be affecting our families, what's going to be affecting many of the children, and specifically many of our young adults, right, who are likely to be in these sorts of situations. So with that, I'd like to now open up this portion between both, the Youth and Education Committee, as well as the Housing and Human Services Committee, to now go pretty much back and forth with our good friend Faye here and her committee, asking questions. And with that being said, I will go ahead and pass along, I guess, the virtual mic to my good friend Hey, are you there?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that I was on mute. So what I was saying is thanking you, for such a wonderful, information, which is so much in concert with this discussion. We really and deeply appreciate it. And I'm sure this would be at some corner, around this discussion, we're gonna find way to associate or bring discussion that actually relate to that information that you just shared with us. I believe that we are in the we find ourselves in a phase of the agenda in which we really wanted to ask our panel. So if they can kindly wanted to brief us, basically in providing us some kind of background or their views around around the subject of homelessness and mental youth crisis. So during this phase, each of them may have at least 3 minutes so they can share with us their view about this particular subject. And once they all have the opportunity to provide their views, and of course their personal opinions. So then I think that it would be a great idea to go into the questions, but let's allow them to give us some kind of background or whatever information they wanted to volunteer that speak to precisely about the subject in discussion today. Thank you, Ariel, again.
Thank you.
So, and yes, we may want to start in the same order that we have the agenda, or whoever is ready to volunteer and share that, that brief, I guess, discussion or their view on this subject. If you want to just raise your hand, who wants to volunteer and go first? Some of the panelists, by all means, just do so. Beth, you want to start?
Sure, I'm happy to start. Thank you. So thank you so much for that detailed explanation, because it does help kind of frame the conversation without us having to go into it, which is great. I think one thing I want to point out is that when people think about homelessness, like the average person thinks about homelessness, to be honest with you, when you ask, most of the time they think of folks who are unsheltered, who are living not in a shelter, who are perhaps living like rough out on the street, sleeping in parks, or maybe are doubled up sometimes or couch surfing. But in New York City, we're unique in that we have the right to shelter, particularly to go into DHS shelter. But it's important to note that DHS is just one of kind of a larger shelter system, even within New York City. HRA runs the domestic violence shelters, which is the Human Resources Administration. Where Randy works, as he's already talked about, and we'll talk about more, DYCD, they run the youth shelter system. HPD runs a shelter system for folks who are displaced due to fire or, emergency to their home. And then there's a whole group of kind of private shelters run primarily by religious organizations and churches and institutions. So, and that's not even including SROs, which is entirely separate, or people who live in HASA placements. So it's just really important to know that there's a lot of options and a lot of groups of people who may define themselves as being homeless. And that's, by the way, not even counting all the families who are doubled up. Like you talk about McKinney-Vento, which is the educational act that gives all these rights to homeless students. Their definition is very broad, is the broadest definition of homelessness, but a lot of other definitions are much smaller. And it's just important to note that when, know that when someone might come to you and talk about a living situation, they may not even define themselves as homeless, but legally they may be or may not be, depending on which setting that they're in. And it's just a good thing to know. There's a lot out there. In terms of, I'll just touch on briefly kind of mental health related issues. There's a lot of people on this panel who work directly with clients and will be on these issues. Because I am a lawyer, a lot of the work I'm doing, someone's mental health needs are very important. About 60% of adults in shelter or a family unit in shelter have someone who's disabled within their unit. That may or may not include mental health, but it often does. And part of why it's important to always consider mental health as a disability and something that may need an accommodation or to be considered is that being homeless itself and going through the process of eviction or escaping domestic violence or being rejected by a family member, the reasons why people become homeless and have to enter a municipal shelter system, that's traumatic in and of itself. Even if you had not been diagnosed with any mental health issue prior to going into shelter, sometimes just that process can be very traumatic and can cause there to be a need for a mental health intervention. And often the experiences that you might be having there, just kind of dealing with kind of the process of like recognizing yourself within this newer community of people. You know, sometimes people don't get along who live in shelter together. And so you're trying to, you know, you've lost maybe your connection, particularly if you're escaping domestic violence, as Ariel said, you're not going to be placed in the same borough. So you could have a family in Washington Heights that's way out maybe in Brownsville. And so like they don't have any of their connections anymore. Like they're people that they saw every day, right? So, and that's for their safety, but there's also a lot of mental health impact that has, as we've learned even during the pandemic, when you're separated from people that you care about and you know in life. So I'll leave it there because I think that's about 3 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you. So, Ariel, you can continue, yes, in the order of the agenda. So, and whoever's want to volunteer as well.
Yeah.
This is your place.
So if there's no quick volunteer, may I suggest?
With me, I always, since I'm the lone government person here, I always allow the other folks to talk before I speak. So I'm deferring to Daniel and Sharon, and then I'll go after them. If they don't have anything, then I'll go. All right. So since they're not talking, that means I'll talk. But with DYCD, we definitely can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. We definitely have a focus on mental health in our programming. You know, and it's one of our key indicators that we, you know, expect our contracted agencies to focus on. You know, the 5 key indicators are housing, employment, education, mental health, and basic independent living skills. But with mental health, we have made sure that any program that's contracted within our runaway and homeless youth division has the necessary funding to, you know, bring on mental health professionals, provide mental health services such as workshop, case management around mental health issues, because we know that you know, our youth are dealing with trauma, like Beth was saying, in regards to the situations that they are facing on a daily basis. So they need services to help them in terms of how to maintain that job that they may have or that housing that they may have, and continue to go to school. So we make sure that we have that embedded, and we work with Thrive NYC. I know it's gotten a bad rep in the papers, but it's been good to us in regards to the funding that they've given to us and that we give to the providers, in making sure that the services are provided, and then there's some accountability to those services that are provided. And there's like 7 key things that the providers do with that funding. And again, that could be around, you know, workshops that they provide. It could be about intensive case management. It could be about creative case management that they do. And, you know, there's many different things. So we definitely have conferences where we provide training to our providers. And one of the big ones that we do on an annual basis, unfortunately, we weren't able to do it this year due to the pandemic, is our Healing the Hurt, where we bring in professionals who, you know, are experienced in trauma and vicarious trauma and other types of mental health issues to speak to our providers, provide them with tools that they could use on a daily basis, not only for their clients, the youth that they service, but also for themselves. Because we got to remember that anything that's happening now, we also have to be a part of it. That's because we too are dealing with trauma on a daily basis. So it's about self-care and making sure we take care of ourselves so that we can pass down and take care of others in terms of the services we provide. And we connect with our sister agencies on specialties that they may have. You know, if something that we do not have a specialty in. We may go to DOH-MH, Department of Health and Mental Health. We may go to ACS if it's a youth that's under the age of 17. So these are things that we try to do on a daily basis and work with the community as well as our sister agencies to do. So, you know, if you are in need of mental health services for youth and want to know more about what we do, you can definitely visit our webpage, as well as you can contact me and I'll help to direct you in the right place.
Thank you. And Baka, seems like you're
I have my hand up.
Ms. Batino.
In the area of mental health, when we look at where most of our children attend, both elementary, middle school, and high school, we're looking at a great deficiency of services, partly because there are not sufficient enough personnel within the school. Many schools just have one counselor to address the needs of many students who have been traumatized. There is a strong need within the schools to provide training for teachers on how to identify students who have demonstrated some type of stress or traumatic experiences and behaviors. There are some schools within our district, and I'm mainly concerned about the district because that's where my information comes from, that are having types of programs that support staff. The majority of the schools, what they have is particular programs to address the social emotional learning needs of children. But we are in, this is a crisis time. And the number of children, and not only children, but staff and family members who are burdened is extreme. And what we also find is that counselors, finding bilingual counselors to meet the needs of our community, who is 75% second language learners, I said is even more difficult. So we're looking at a lot of mental issues and a lot of minimal services within schools to provide for that support, as well as in the community. There are other agencies that can support our youth and our children, but many times if we're doing family support, we need also the bilingual person to be able to provide the best type of service. When we look at virtual counseling, that has become a big issue for parents who have limited technological skills, for families that are immigrant families who have difficulties with actually talking to a computer and back and forth. It's not the same. I mean, it's a little different. So that has also been a challenge. When we look at how children at all age levels are using the virtual constantly, it has, when it comes to counseling, sometimes this is not the way they want to be able to experience that counseling experience. But I want to thank Ariel and Beth and everyone who's on the panel, because I'm honored to be with such distinguished people here. And I want to thank Faye as well for always putting homelessness on the forefront. It is a major issue for me personally, and it's a major issue for the children within the community, something that is not going to go away anytime soon. And so I applaud all of you who are working to try to make it better. The system, as well as the educational system, has a lot of growth in this area. And I think that just talking and discussing and trying to look up for some solutions, and also pushing our voice to state to the people who are actually listening to this, that we need to have action done for the welfare of the entire community. And that includes every marginalized community within our city. So that's what I think.
Thank you.
And Sharon or Daniel, would you like to go next?
Sure, I can jump in briefly. Sharon, unless you want to go, I'm happy to go last.
Feel free. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, thanks. I do. I mean, you know, it's hard to quantify at this moment in time in terms of where we are and where we're going vis-a-vis the pandemic. Family homelessness has actually decreased in the DHS system over the past 8 or 9 months, but we have no idea as to really why. It's also been slowly decreasing over the past 4 years, which is by about 21%, which is interesting. I don't think that's also true for HPD and HRA systems with that, but I do think that this is the worst kept secret is that there's a looming crisis. Once the eviction moratorium is lifted, assuming it'll be fully lifted in the new year, which is what it seems like, there'll be a flood of cases in housing court, and there won't nearly be funds to prevent people from eviction because so many people are behind in their rents. We run permanent supportive housing, and when we looked at our rent rolls, the number of tenants who are just unable to pay their rent in the pandemic has just increased by something like 70 to 80%. Now, many of those folks have a subsidy, so it's not, for us, it's not at that serious. For folks renting market rate apartments, it's a very, very big deal. Homeless prevention programs, we paid out this year alone well over $2 million in direct financial assistance, even though evictions aren't happening. There is that moratorium in most cases, not all, but most, because we want to settle the arrears now to prevent folks who are really going to be at the cusp in January and February. But there is a tidal wave coming, and it's just a matter of size and scope.
So true.
Yes. So I can go next, and maybe I'm last. And yeah, I think for us, as we are at the hub working directly with young people, we've come to find that there truly are so many different reasons and situations that homelessness can happen, and really varying widely based on the young person. And I think for us, we really try to have a very youth-centered approach and understanding what are the reasons, what are the factors that are leading to housing issues and mental health issues. And so as we've been getting to know our young people more and developing those relationships, we really do find that a lot of the ones who have this particular issue may be leaving on their own, leaving their family home really as an escape mechanism in a lot of ways, because they're in invalidating, maybe perhaps abusive or even dangerous home environments. We have also had young people come and share with us, those who are in the LGBTQ+ community in particular, who have actually been kicked out by family members who won't necessarily accept them for who they are. And so we are just seeing a whole array of reasons why this ends up happening. And then more generally speaking, I would also want to say that a lot of our young people, it really is just the simple financial strains, the financial difficulties that ultimately lead to the housing instability or the overcrowded situation, which I know Beth had alluded to before as well. And then to kind of connect to the mental health piece, something that I wanted to bring up is really there does seem to be this cyclical nature about it. It's not one that always leads to another. It can be very bidirectional. Specifically for different mental illnesses, we have noticed like mood disorders, PTSD, substance use, psychosis, really can be predictors then of future homelessness. But then it's the other way around, vice versa, that, and that was also mentioned before, that we are hearing the stories of having to go through the system, go through the shelter, or even the application process can be that traumatic event, which can be a predictor of then the development of a mental illness, which could include suicidal ideation or even suicide attempts. And so, you know, given all of these realities, I definitely think it's so critical that at the very minimum that providers and staff are aware of and sensitive to the unique needs of each individual that might be experiencing these housing issues or homelessness. And that is certainly something that our staff is very committed to considering and being better versed in. So I'll leave it at that and we can continue the conversation.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, so I guess I'll start handing this now off to really Faye to take the first question here.
Yes, if I may, I would like to kind of make a parenthesis because I think that is something that I just noticed. And before we go into the question, which actually may serve as a break for our panelists, I just want to highlight some names that to me it's very important for me personally that I acknowledge their presence, you know, in this important event. I wanted to say, for example, I wanted to acknowledge Natalie Espino from the Board of President office. She's always like a guard, you know, faithfully attending our meeting. Natalie, thank you so very much for being with us tonight. I also wanted to thank our board members. Not necessarily they are member of this committee, but they are our colleague because they are member of the Community Board 12. Sally Fisher, thank you so much, Sally. We also have Marshall Vanderpool, thank you. Bruce Robertson, Leo Jimenez, and Dr. Rosa Yolanda Pineda from Conectémonos. And we also have Mariela Ali, and of course, my colleague, which I deeply appreciate and love very much, Curtis John. Thank you so much for being here. If I forget any name, just forgive me, but from time to time, I'm gonna be watching who is there. Oh, also we have Julio Batista. Julio, thank you so very much. Julio is from the Presbyterian Hospital in Community Relations. Julio, thank you so much. So thank you all. So let's proceed, Ariel, with our agenda.
I wanted to ask, did you want to take the first question or did you want me to perhaps start?
Well, actually, you know, I definitely would like to pick on that. Yes, why not? Yes, thank you for being so kind. So yes, so the following question is for the panel, and I wanted to also tell them that on each of these questions, you may have at least 2 or 3 minutes to answer. You may not necessarily have to answer all the questions that I'm going to be asking on behalf of my committee, but you know, feel free to whether answer the question or not answer the question, but you know, it's up to you. So here goes with the first question. My first question is, if it's possible, can you describe the existing crisis in our community district? You know, this is a school district 6 that had negatively impacted our homeless population. If you just raise your hand, whoever wants to go first. Ms. Batino, go ahead, please. Thank you.
I think you have the mute button still on.
Yeah, I do. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Ariel, for giving me background to what I'm going to say. But I'm specifically talking about Washington Heights and Inwood community. In our community, there are approximately 200,000 residents in the Washington Heights and Inwood. Prior to the pandemic, 20% of our community lived in poverty. That's about 40,000 people. This has significantly increased as a result of the pandemic and the loss of jobs. For new immigrants and those that are undocumented, re-entering the workforce is not a possibility at this time or in the near future. 53% of our community was rent burdened before the pandemic. So before the pandemic in 2019, they were rent burdened. This has doubled as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, which is about exactly what Daniel had said, 80-something%. Although there is a moratorium on eviction, parents and single adults are still required to pay rent, and landlords can still give penalties for late payments. One of the biggest complaints heard on our community is how landlords are harassing families and refusing to renew their lease, as well as giving them eviction notices that are 90% of the time based on fraudulent claims. This impacts the most vulnerable of our community, the families who feared deportation and who already are rent burdened. In many cases, landlords are also refusing to accept vouchers to assist family in attaining an apartment. Because of the lack of jobs, food insecurity in this community is at an all-time high. Countries, CBOs, churches, and other agencies claim that they have seen a large increase in the number of people online to receive food. 75% of homeless children in the Heights live in double-up residencies. Given the money problems the families are experiencing from lack of work and the high cost of rents in Washington Heights, have resorted to join other family members or move into a single unit with a small space. Not only has this increased the level of stress for families, but it has led to an increase in domestic violence, coronavirus infections, transmissions, and the death of many families members. And our schools see children who are all talking about someone in their family who has died or a close friend. Families are also experiencing a high level of stress and trauma from coronavirus deaths, fear of being homeless, food insecurity, and has caused them great depression. Their children are responding by not sleeping, changing their eating habits, feeling anxious and hyper, crying, feeling depressed, showing a lot of negative behavior. And these students fail to complete schoolwork and lack engagement in the learning process. As a result of the pandemic, many of our families chose remote learning because they were fearful that the schools were unsafe. They heard everything about the ventilation issues and about not getting enough support, and they decided to go remote. This has created many additional burdens on our families, with the lack of internet connectivity and iPads that need continuous repairs. It has also created another challenge for families struggling to help their children at home with barriers of language and tech skills. As a result, students are lagging further behind academically. This is evident for children living in double-up residencies and temporary housing and shelters who are second language learners or have special needs and live in environments not conducive to privacy, low noise level, and support. And what parents of the high school students and middle school students are saying is that they're having a problem controlling their teenagers. These young adults are unmotivated to participate in school. This is especially true for second language learners and new immigrants that are negatively impacted by the isolation that the pandemic has caused. They are depressed, withdrawn, and refuse to attend school. Absenteeism is much higher level at this time in our middle schools and high schools. All over the city, the largest homeless group that is growing at a rapid rate is young single adults. They are the least likely to regain their jobs and the most vulnerable for homelessness. They are in our communities struggling to survive in this pandemic. So we have a large population of these children. Our low-income renters who lost their jobs are also on the verge of homelessness. Our new immigrant or undocumented population that did not receive unemployment insurance or benefits from the CARES Act are also at high risk of being homeless. Families that resorted to double up as a result of the pandemic are now counted among the homeless. And that doesn't mean that schools know who they are, because identification of these children has become very difficult in a system that is a little chaotic given the situation in which they had to do the hybrid learning. When the moratorium ends, there will be, as many of you pointed out, a major crisis of homelessness in our city, in our community. We need to be prepared for what is coming, and we need to shout out as to what some of those issues are. And although I am mainly concentrating on what the community has stated to me, our teachers, our parents, and even our children, it says this is very much part of the entire city where brown and Black people are living.
Thank you, Blanca. Thank you so much for speaking to these issues. So I also want to ask, because I realize this is a particular group that I think just, although they make up such a specific portion of the population of our youth that are homeless, it often doesn't get, I think the attention that sometimes is really needed on such, not just the citywide level, but also the national level. And it's in reference to those youth that are specifically dealing, or rather, I would say having to find their identities throughout such an important period of their life, and specifically for those that are LGBTQ plus, are going to have specific concerns that are going to rise throughout their developing years. One of the things that has been brought up within our committee, our community board, it's been raised as one of the concerns specifically for individuals that want to enter shelter, is really where is there a barrier for youth to seek out shelter? I have, wanted to make sure that people understood what those are. But I also want to ask you all individually what you think those barriers are to LGBTQ youth entering and accessing shelters at this time.
All right, Ms. Martino, thank you so much. That was a very elaborated response. So Ariel, so should we go ahead and go next?
Yeah, Faye, I was asking the question to the panelists.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
LGBT kids, the issue is the feeling of safety, and also the fear of being in an environment that sometimes when they are in that environment, they're not sure whether they're going to be safe based on their own experiences, living at home or living with relatives or living with friends. So the shelter experience is traumatic for everyone. And the worst of it is that not only when I first became a principal, children in shelters were there for maybe 6 months to a year. That's not the case anymore. I get some children in shelters go in and out of shelters for about 2 to 3 and sometimes 5 times. So you're looking at, continuous. LGBT children also have, or young adults, or even always also have difficulties finding apartments or finding places in which they can live. I said, there is discrimination, great discrimination. And you have to think of the culture of the community, which is 75% or 80% Hispanic, and all cultural issues that deal with the discrimination of these poor students. It is going to take a lot. I feel that at least at this time, more people are willing to talk about it. I think there are more organizations that support them. And that's what they need. They need a lot of support because they are also one of the highest rates of suicides among this community. So we need to protect these students. Perhaps now in the future, there will be more monies in that area to support them. But I would think that that would be, I mean, it's my own personal opinion, but based on what I know, I think that that would be one of the reasons why shelter is not something that they would look forward to.
I can chime in also and just add to Blanca what you're saying, because I think you raised some really important points, especially with regards to the safety issue. I think also something that our team has really come to realize with the young people that we've been working with is that, if I could speak a little bit frankly, there are not that many options that are out there. You know, there is just limited housing that is more for the general population of youth, or, you know, we have found that a lot of the options that are available come with very certain, you know, specific requirements, such as, you know, you need some kind of severe mental health illness, disorder, or disability that ultimately disqualifies many of our youth. And so it has been an interesting system to navigate. And so if we're talking about barriers, I do think that that is just one of the things that we are often confronting, at least for the young people that do come to the hub and are looking for that resource. The other thing that I did also want to mention, and hearkening back again to Blanca, your earlier point of overcrowded apartments, because that really has been a huge issue that we have seen, where our young people are stuck at home with tons of family members living in very small 1, maybe 2-bedroom apartments. And that has been a really big barrier as far as mental health access. You know, a lot of the mental health treatment has been able to convert to the virtual, you know, telepsych and that type of thing. But obviously, if you are in a very crowded environment with that lack of privacy, it's very hard to have that confidential conversation. And so the adherence to the treatment plan or to coming to those appointments has been rather difficult. And so I just wanted to highlight and sort of amplify that challenge is definitely something that we're seeing on the ground.
All right.
I mean, I'll just add that in a, I don't know, I always try to say, like, here are the things as they are legally exist, which isn't reality. I mean, I think if there's anything we all have seen in the past, you know, when you like see what happened with Breonna Taylor, for example, the law cannot fix everything, because the law is still based on, if I'm going to get super political, like the systems of white supremacy that have existed in this country since its founding. So like there are things the law can't fix, or there are things that are morally need to be addressed, or like that as humans we need to address, that the law kind of can't solve, or can't solve all the time. So legally, there should not be a barrier. The thing about the right to shelter for a single person in New York City, no matter how you identify, whether you're gender nonconforming, you identify as a gender, what have you, you can go into an intake center and they are required to take you at DHS. And also Randy may speak to this too, but there are vacancies in the runaway homeless youth system. So during the pandemic, once you kind of got over that like initial hump, when there was maybe some period of time where for safety purposes, some of the youth shelters, you know, had to restrict some beds due to some spacing related to COVID, like you should be able to get into a bed in either of those systems. And in DHS, there is also Marsha's House, which is a shelter that is focused and set aside just for people who identify as LGBTQIA, TGNC, and, you know, under the age of 30. So it's like a very specific youth shelter for that. Now, I will say all of this, which is Blanca is exactly right, and Sharon's exactly right, which is people's individual experiences and how and where they feel safe means that all of those options may not work for them because of of what their individual needs are, which is why having a lot of options is incredibly important. So I just want to say legally, there shouldn't be a barrier. We work and help people every single day to try to figure out if there's a way we can make them feel safe enough, get supports in place that make them feel safe enough. But I would never be one to say that the shelter system feels safe for everyone. It feels safe for, on some level, sometimes I think for a lot of people, it doesn't feel safe at all, depending on their circumstances. And so I don't want to sugarcoat it, but at Legal Aid, we have a hotline. We literally talk to people every single day and help them get access to where they feel safe. So in theory, there shouldn't be a barrier, even though there definitely are barriers.
It shouldn't.
And I would like to add to what Beth is saying in regards to services. One of the things that the UICD has done over the years is definitely try to provide the necessary education and sensitivity to those providing services to the LGBTQ plus population. And we've done that to the point where we have, all of our beds are available to the LGBTQ plus. We have some providers that specialize in working with the LGBTQ community, and such as the Ali Forney Center, is one of our biggest ones, in terms of making sure that we understand the resources, understand the language, the sensitivity around providing services. So that's something that we do on a yearly basis. We're probably the only agency that has beds specifically for transgender youth, which is something that, came to be because that's what the providers talked about needing. And when we put out requests for proposals, that's what they submitted in terms of their proposal. So we look definitely to make sure that our LGBTQ plus community is receiving the services that they deserve. About 40%, I would say anywhere from like 35 to 40% of the youth in programming identify as LGBTQ plus. So it makes it important for us to have the necessary services available to them so that they can have that. So they can go to any one of our drop-ins. Again, we have 5 drop-ins, one in each borough. That's 24 hours, 7 days a week. So if someone is in need of any service at any given time, they can go to that respective drop-in to receive that service, as well as a referral. The residential programs that we have are not big like DHS. A lot of you think of warehousing when you think of DHS. For our programs, we have 6-bed programs, 10-bed programs, and the biggest that we have is 20 outside of Covenant House, which was one of our largest ones that many know from being around for many, many years. So we try to make it an intimate setting that our contractors have with their residential sites so that people can be close to each other, they can feel the trust between themselves and the youth there, as well as themselves and the staff, and make sure that they're receiving the services. So those are some of the things that we have available for our LGBTQ plus community.
All right. Daniel, you want to say anything?
Sure. Since we run so many DHS shelters, our best shelters are the smaller shelters, clearly. When we opened up Help Audubon last year, actually exactly a year ago, this month, we fought with the city to lessen the amount of beds. And the city always wants to maximize the number of beds for a particular facility to maximize capacity. We were able to get them down from 200 to 174, which was helpful, but it wasn't a game changer. For us, what's been a game changer has been unfortunately the pandemic and moving about half of our clients to hotels. We have about 90 of our clients at Audubon at one of the Upper West Side hotels, and they're doing really well. No cases of COVID, no positive cases, both at Audubon and at the hotels in the last 4 months. Women are working, they're feeling safe and secure, they're in hotel rooms. At Audubon, I'm there frequently, I was there last week. It's a shelter for 174, nominally for 174 people, but with about 95 clients there. It actually feels freer and more open. We have a beautiful roof deck garden, it's very nice. But I think the larger point is that when city needs to site shelters because of the right to shelter, they're only looking at capacity and they're trying to push as many beds into a tight space as what OTDA, the state regulations, allow and what the finances actually work for. which I have, as a social worker, I just have a deep problem with that. Like I said, our smaller shelters are the most comfortable. We have the least amount of incidents. Clients reflect that they feel safe and secure there. But when we have people in 250 bed shelters, we often have more problems, as you can imagine, as living in a huge dorm style shelter and all of that. So really, I think I'm hoping the pandemic will open this DHS's eyes towards not just a capacity issue, it's about wellness. It's about beds not being 3 feet apart, but being 6 feet apart. It's about not having congregate style where you have 30 beds or 20 beds in a room, where it needs to be, if it's an old SRO converted, it should be 1 bed, maybe 2 to that room, and not 3 or 4 like it is now. And that's an ongoing issue that the city and the next administration really needs to address. We had Homeless Services United, a trade group, put forth a paper to DHS to say, this needs to realign in a new normative way. And we need to stop thinking about just capacity. We need to think about wellness. We need to think about what it's like for the client, and we need to help them feel good about, not good, but feel less bad about being in shelter, so that we're moving them more quickly toward the exit door, and obviously in a beneficial way.
Thank you, Daniel. Well, I see that the clock is cooking. So I wanted to move to our next question, because I think that our next question is also very important. So the next question is, how is your organization or your agency, etc., working to resolve and support our homeless population? I think that goes pretty well with you as well, Danny. If anyone want to jump in immediately. Should I repeat the question again?
No, I'll go ahead. I'll start us off.
All right.
Just, I want to just start by saying, and you have, Etta is a housing attorney at Legal Aid, and so you have an expert in your midst all the time, which is wonderful. But if going to something that Blanca said earlier, which I think is really important, if you are not sure what is happening to you in regards to your apartment, you should call 311 immediately, and you will have access to legal advice. Whether it's a piece of paper posted on a wall that's not even directed towards you, that you feel like is harassment or intimidation, whether it's something that looks like the landlord's trying to kick you out, there is a legal process that has to exist for you to be evicted. And you may have a case based upon the harassment you're getting. You may have a defense based upon what the landlord is doing, which is illegal, based upon, frankly, what is a very confusing set of orders and moratoriums from the federal and state level and everything. So the easiest thing to do, because everybody's details are so different, is please call 311, and you will get to speak to someone who will be able to at least give you a sense of what is going on and what your options are, particularly in the next handful of months as this becomes even more confusing. Because evictions have started upstate, evictions are happening, people are going to court in New York City. So when you hear the moratorium, it sounds like nothing can happen. There are some things that can happen, but again, it's very fact specific, literally based upon certain dates that things may have happened. So please call 311 if you remember nothing else that I said. Legal Aid is enormous. I don't even know how many attorneys we are now, probably over 1,400 attorneys. It's the largest nonprofit law firm in the country. We work on any kind of legal issue with the exception of helping people plan for wills. And we generally don't sue for individual damages on tort cases. So like if you get injured by something in New York City, we're probably not going to be able to represent you on that case. But almost anything else, we probably would be able to. So if you're ever not sure where to go, you can always call the Legal Aid main number, and the staff there is trained to help you find what you need. And that during the pandemic, we have a whole COVID-19 page where it talks and is updated every day with updates about different things that are happening related to employment law. And, are you able to get certain kinds of benefits? There's an access to benefits hotline you can call. That's available to people call our homeless rights hotline. If I had a way to drop that in a chat, I probably would, but the link, but you can go there to find out information. I just want to put one more thing out there, which is that In particular, right now, we're really trying to make sure that any person who is having trouble accessing the internet, and unfortunately for me and my job, it's related to whether you are in a city-run shelter, so that can be HRA, DHS. To be honest with you, I'm not just saying this because Randy's here. I haven't heard about an issue in a DYCD shelter, but if there is one, and then HPD, you can please contact us because we would really like to make sure young people in shelter are not missing school. Whether you're 23 and you're just finishing, high school, whether your child is, 6, like whatever the age. So please reach out to us, and Faye has my contact information if for some reason I can't drop it in the question and answer here.
Right. Kim, you wanted to, chip in? You want to say something? Thank you, Beth.
I think you were talking about me, Sharon.
Yeah, Kim.
Yes.
Miss Kim, yes.
Yes. So yes, I can definitely chime in. I mentioned earlier that for our team and working directly with our youth and being a youth development program, I think very specifically with the housing, we continue to work with our team of psychologists and our youth advocates so that they can develop different and appropriate treatment plans and brainstorm the different resource needs. And so there have certainly been referrals that have been made out to different external agencies, some of which have been mentioned here, but also, Bailey House, Housing Connect, The Door. And so that there are certainly options that are out there. And so our team has gotten quite adept at figuring out and helping our young people navigate that. But beyond, I would say the treating of the symptoms and some of the more immediate, I guess, or obvious resource needs, we definitely approach our work with our youth from more of a prevention lens. And so, as I had mentioned before, having things like academic support, but also employment readiness activities, which does include paid opportunities. We really hope to cultivate and support a whole, next generation of young people that can hopefully feel empowered and equipped to enter the workforce or enter adulthood and eventually be participating members of society, avoid financial instability that could then lead to homelessness. So we really do approach the issue from more of that prevention lens. I would say that we have a strong belief in our young people and their ability to rise up and break through these systems and really establish for themselves and even their loved ones safe homes for their futures. So that would be my 2 cents here.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. Yes, thank you.
If you don't, I can add in. One of the things that we are looking to do more of, and we've been doing it for probably the last year, 2 years, is work with our Youth Action Board. That's a group of youth who have been homeless or are currently homeless, working on different issues that affect them on a daily basis. So we've been bringing them more to the table because we want to hear from them and help, in terms of building services around what their true needs are. So that's something that we definitely have done more of, over the last 2 years, especially around our youth count, where they provided some key guidance and information on how to do it better. So that's one of the things, and I also just put that in the Q&A in terms of ways that people can volunteer is to participate in the youth count, which is us basically identifying a week after the city, DHS does their hope count of counting adults, homeless adults. We count homeless youth, and we do a survey of people, of youth who, and their whereabouts on a specific day. But we do it for a full week. So, we always need people who can volunteer to assist in that. So that's something that we can do. We also, in supporting our homeless population, this, for this administration, Mayor de Blasio has put in a great investment for homeless services. Since he's become our mayor, you know, the budget for runaway and homeless youth services has increased drastically. I always tell people this: when I first started at DYC 10 years ago, my budget was 5 million, and now my budget is about 52 million. And that includes from improving from 153 beds to 813 today, having 24-hour drop-in centers where youth can go at any time, you know, if they should have an issue, or just to get off the street where they don't have to ride the trains, or, you know, sleep in a 24-hour business, or, you know, things like that, and receive services. So these are some of the investments that we've had. We've also worked with, you know, like I said, Thrive, to bring services to our programs where they can work around the mental health issues. We also work with the Unity Project, which focuses on LGBTQ issues. So we're looking to make sure that we have all of those supports available to youth at any given time in order to address their matters, you know, and help them, you know, with what they need. So these are some of the things, and I look forward. I put my email address in the Q&A. So if people have issues and want to know about things in your respective community, feel free to call me, feel free to email me, and I'll share with you that information, as well as if presentations need to happen in your community because people are not aware that DYCD has a runaway and homeless youth division, we can make that known. I know everybody hears about SYEP or our you know, cornerstone developments or our beacons, but runaway and homeless youth is a big thing at DYCD, and I want people to be aware of that. So please connect with me so that you can hear about the services and the support so that we can make sure that everyone receives them when they need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Who is next? Daniel, and maybe you want to go and share, you know, a few thoughts with us.
You know, the panelists really gave a great synopsis. I really don't have much to add. I mean, as a service provider, I have to say we're always concerned with our level of service delivery. I mean, we've tried to be creative. We have creative arts programming in our homeless shelters. It's unusual, especially at the front door of shelter for women, that we have the two in New York City, one in the Bronx and one in Brooklyn. We hold panels, or we did anyway, up until the pandemic, with some regularity. We do connect with community partners. I do see in the Q&A, there's questions about volunteer opportunities. Normally at our Audubon site in Washington Heights, I would say absolutely, but we have an organizational wide kind of moratorium on in-person volunteer opportunities, probably through the spring, just given the rise in the cases and all of that. But yeah, always looking to consider what we're doing our business a little bit better. You know, as a service provider, when I do walkthroughs at our sites, and still do, I've always been continuing to go throughout the pandemic, you know, some clients would say to me, you know, without us, you'd be out of business. And my first response is absolutely. You're like, you know, you are our customer. And while not every client in our shelters, you know, will rave about the kind of services we provide, we do take hard looks at the kind of services that we do provide and can provide. And we're often in dogfights with the city to make sure that our budgets are not gutted, to make sure that programming that we consider essential is not gutted. And we're really concerned as we move forward into this next phase of budget cuts. We offered, the city almost demanded that we cut over $5 million from a number of our sites. We negotiated that down to about 4 million. But we're really worried. We're worried that these recreational and therapeutic activities that we have at our sites, which includes creative art therapists, social workers, counselors, things that folks we never had, clinical services we never had before, really up until 5 years ago, up until the de Blasio administration, we're afraid that they're coming after us. The city's saying that we're in such dire straits, we have to cut these kind of programs, and we'll fight tooth and nail and consider suing the city to allow us to retain this level of robust programming. You know, so we're really concerned in the next 6 months. I mean, this is unheard of, if I can say that, in the middle of a fiscal year. We're almost in the middle of it. The city comes to us and says, we want you to cut over $5 million in services. And we go back and as good faith that we say, we found 4 million that's not going to harm our clients, whether security, food, or services. But we're afraid that the city's going to come back to us in 3 months and say, you need to cut another 4 million. at this point, we're going to raise holy hell because we're not going to do it. We can't do it. So we're really concerned about holding that line right now, and worried about the financial situation of the city and the federal government's, failure to pass any next CARES Act, as it were. Concerned about that. So not to put a damper on some of the kind of micro conversations that's going on, all the good work, but I'm very concerned over the next 3 to 6 months.
I'm concerned.
So
Go ahead. Yes, briefly, because the time is up or no. Go ahead, Ariel. You have a comment, please.
Yeah. So I actually think that's a good way to segue into one of I'll say my last questions. Given the concerns that we have, and some folks have expressed some excitement about politics recently. There's kind of this idea now flowing that maybe we might actually get some further funding coming from the federal government within the next few months. Given this is all potential, this is all thought right now, but given that, regardless, we're still expecting an uptick in cases, we're still expecting the concerns of people still perhaps becoming homeless, what would you say that your organizations will need to focus on within the next few months, regardless of funding? Let's just say in the best situation, you're going to be getting that funding. What is your organization going to be focused on for the next few months to deal with the upcoming, greater crisis than we already have?
Well,
okay.
I can go first. Well, with DYCD, one of the things that we're definitely doing right now is we're working with our sister agencies around testing and tracing. So we want to make sure that the youth know their status, whether they have the virus or not, and need to get the necessary medical care. So that's one of the things that we're focused on primarily right now. Second is we are going to continue to work around those 5 key indicators. We haven't stopped. The services have not stopped by our contractors due to the virus. They've been working very hard to make sure that they continue to provide services to youth. So they're going to continue to focus on the educational piece, making sure that they are attending the schools virtually and getting that necessary degree. Or
I need to say something before I turn it to him.
You want to say something? Oh, okay. So getting that necessary degree, employment, continuing to do those jobs that are available for folks to do, whether it's virtually or in person if things are allowable, and dealing with mental health and so on and so on. So we're going to continue to do those things, up until it can't be done anymore. And the good thing is that the funding that we currently have is baseline, so it's hopefully going to stay and won't be taken away.
Okay. Where are we so far? So Randy already spoke. Ms. Battino, yes?
I'm going to be talking basically about what schools are doing to help and support the homeless or the future homeless students. One of the things, as Beth had mentioned before, is, the McKinney-Vento law, which says that all students who have come to the school who are homeless must be registered and must have the same services and participate in the same academic activities as all the students within the school. What is happening now, though, is that identifying these students has become very difficult in the schools. As you hear in the newspapers and other media, the schools are a little on the reorganizational type of mode. So I am fearful that some of our children who are homeless will be going under the wire. We have 21,000 District 6 school students who are supposed to be provided with iPads, and that includes our homeless students and attending the District 6 schools. However, there has been a continuous problem with connectivity. There have been several plans to support the homeless children, but it has still to be really fixed. This is a continuous problem. In fact, I read today that they're thinking about putting buses in front of shelters to provide them with connectivity. The sad part of all of this is that we begin to realize how deficient our schools are and our shelters are in terms of being built to provide for the future generations. So this has been a major problem for parents. The iPads are also not, in many cases, good iPads. I don't know what the problem is, but they're always breaking down. And this is a major problem for parents, both in shelters as well, temporary housing, and parents throughout the community. It is a big problem because getting them repaired sometimes means that they have to give up their iPad and that they wait 3 months for the iPad to be repaired before they can get another one. Schools have been trying to support these by giving them laptops that they had maybe in their tech room. I said, but the demand is great. So this is a help, but not completely. When we look at the New York City takeout meals for students doing remote, it is offered almost in every school in the district for breakfast and lunch. However, what is happening, it is, yes, they're giving meals to the kids, but parents in our community are complaining that some of the lunch meals are not edible. They're not frozen. In fact, one of the parents showed me a picture of the lunch, and it was supposed to be a cheese sandwich that was frozen, and the cheese didn't even look real. She couldn't even melt it to make it a grilled cheese sandwich. Wow. So even though this is being provided, and we know that it is helpful, but it is not, we can't have kids in school, especially kids who are homeless, without food, given that there is such a food insecurity within our communities. So this is something that I guess is helpful, but not incomplete. And the adult meals that were offered in the summer are offered from 3 to 5 in 3 schools. Junior high school 52, PS 36, and PS 48. I don't know, many of the parents weren't even aware of this. Maybe the communication, although it's virtual for parents, has to be provided in other ways so that parents understand that this is something. So the city is trying to provide some support, but unfortunately it's not getting out there. Schools are also trying to give to our homeless children, our children most in need, supplies and packets for them to continue to work academically. Safety guidelines for the student and staff are followed and mandated within the school so that the kids are safe. And this is part of what they're trying to do for children. However, one of the problems that we're having is that many of the children and families are saying that the kids feel so isolated from the spaces and they only eat in their classrooms, they don't go to the gym, they stay put, almost like a prisoner, till it's time to leave. And I understand it is part of safety, but it's also impeding a child's natural development to interact and to have physical activity in some way. So they're trying to resolve this and work out some solution, but I wanted it known. And I agree with money. Money has been always the resource that has condemned our systems to give mediocre or at best the support that our families need. And one of the issues that I do want to bring up is the issue of affordable housing, which they predict that by 2022, about 4,462 units, apartments will be gone. We are in the midst in our community of gentrification. And we have to be able to afford to provide, if we're going to not eradicate, but at least decrease the homelessness in our community by providing some type of affordable housing for our children. That is, I think, the ultimate goal of what the city should be doing. As well as, I believe there is a legislation or law, maybe Beth, you know, that says that for every 40 housing of 40 apartments, 15% has to go for people with less rent capability. So we'll see if that comes to be. But I think that is also one of the areas that we need to push and get some funds for.
And just to confirm, that's local law 19 of 2019.
Oh, see, I remembered.
See, you don't need lawyers. We're not that useful.
You're knowledgeable. You're knowledgeable.
I'll just add, I mean, look, we've been transparent about it. We're going to file a lawsuit against the city of New York to sue about the fact that kids in shelter don't have access to school because they don't have iPads that work. So that's going to happen, hopefully very, very soon. It's been in the works as soon as it became obvious that they didn't have a plan. The city didn't have a plan to fix it. So that's a way that I think as a lawyer, we try to help to just get them forced to do something. I think there's the short-term help and long-term help with a lot of these issues. I read that article today about the buses too, and was kind of like, okay, like if it does help in the short term, okay, but I don't think any of us imagine that like school buses parked outside of shelters is like the way to actually deal with this problem long-term. So we'll, keep working on that, but yeah, but we'll keep, I mean, I would say legal aid, we've been suing about things like, we haven't talked about stuff like public charge or, how our immigrant neighbors and brothers and sisters have just been at the, attacked from all sides, particularly from the federal government and policies. And we will continue to fight to get people out of Rikers so that they don't catch COVID. I mean, like we're trying to do a lot of things as an agency. And a lot of that has involved a lot of lawsuits lately. We don't like to always go there because I think it's more effective and quicker to often be able to work stuff out otherwise. But if you're asking what legal aid's doing, we will continue to be, suing folks a lot in the coming as much as we can. You can't sue about everything you might want to. So I will just mention too that the DOE does have a help desk and a form that if people, are having trouble with their device, what they're having to do often is switch out the SIM cards in the iPad, which will move them from a T-Mobile cellular service to Verizon, which for some people in New York is making a big difference for access.
Yes.
But some shelters it's not working. So again, I'm not sure how I can put it in the chat if there's not a question related to it, but I have the link and the number I can share. I'm sure also I know that HELP and other shelters are sharing this information with people who live there. So please, if no one should have to be waiting for 3 months, like that's not okay. And again, if people want direct help, like we are helping people with this every day. Advocates for Children is helping out with this every day. And if people are in shelter, the shelter staff has been helping at most shelters that we've been working with. So I'll just throw that out there. And I guess the last thing I will say in terms of homelessness is, by definition, homelessness is if you don't have a place to call home. And so going to Blanca's point and other points that were made, having enough affordable permanent housing for New Yorkers who live here and want to stay here is the number one thing that everyone should be pushing, and particularly pushing the new mayor and the new city council. A lot of people are running for a lot of positions in the next year citywide, and it's going to be really important to have people in there who understand and can support the efforts to make sure that this is a city where people can live and survive and exist without being, a millionaire. So the number one thing I would push.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to try and draw this out quickly now with the questions, but I want to give time for Faye if you have one last question. And also, Sally, I know you've been holding your hand up there. Faye, do you have a question? If not, I'll go.
Yes, actually, one very last question that I have. And before I pose that question, I just wanted to tell the folks that I'm waiting. We have, I don't know the amount of questions, but we have quite a few questions, including from Senator Robert Jackson office and Coach Dave and other folks. And also I have another question directly for Daniel. So, but let me pose my question first, so then I will at least share that very I want to let them folks that, we will get back to you. So here is my question. I would like to basically to encourage all of you, of course, our panels. So if they can voice their recommendation for the strategies that can best support and improve our homelessness population in the areas of housing, mental health, education, and youth programs, etc. Any recommendation that you may have, it would be definitely highly appreciated. In particular, this will be picked up for our CBOs and other agencies in the community that can help. So by all means, whoever wants to just go ahead. And with that, I conclude my question until, next. Thank you, Ariel, for being so kind. Maybe Daniel, I don't know, or Randy. Who wants to answer who wants to go first? Should I repeat the question? Should I repeat the questions?
No, I don't think so. I feel like most of us maybe have answered it in other answers. So I think that's why we might be pausing. And if there's other people's questions, I think we're happy to answer those.
Yeah, definitely. I know that there's been 2 people who has their hands raised, so I don't know if they want to ask questions.
So I will give them the floor, or the whatever it is at this point, to Sally. Sally.
Yeah, I guess my big concern, and Blanca, you've talked about it a little bit, which is the whole identification. How do you identify, especially in the school system? I'm thinking the school right around the corner for me, where the vast majority are remote students. Teachers have an idea of who's not showing up, who seems to, even when they show up, who seems to be disconnected. But how do we reach out through our teachers to identify those students most in need? Is there a way?
Well, the one of the ways that they do is that they communicate personally through chats with parents, the ones who are doing in remote. The idea is to question to see about their living. They talk to the parents and they actually get information about what's happening. Sometimes parents are not willing to open up, and so that becomes difficult because for them to be homeless, that would be something that they don't want to say. For shelter, it's different because we get the information directly. For when they go to shelters or whatever. But part of the problem also is that we don't have enough personnel in schools to really talk to parents and to create a bond so that parents are more willing to say what their situation is. Schools can't help if they really don't know. And so teachers are trying to make great bonds with parents. But that is one of the issues that has really occurred with the identification of our homeless population. So it is an issue. It has been an issue, and it is still continues to be even a greater issue given the fact that many of our families are now uniting in order to not have to pay such high rents. They can use all their monies together. So, but that's a good question.
Yeah, I wish it was solvable.
There's so many things I wish were solvable. I wish I was a lawyer.
No, I just worry about the double stigma. I mean, first you've got the homelessness and you've got the mental health, and this is a community where mental health is going to be stigmatized anyway. It's like, there's nothing wrong with me. And it's like, you don't understand what you might need. And so
it's true. It's hard. It's very hard. So the most that we can do is support them at where they're at, to be sensitive to the needs of the community.
Well, I really appreciate all your help, and I appreciate Ariel and Faye convening this panel. I hope that it's the first of many, many, many. So this is a huge issue in our community.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I'll quickly, I'm seeing Aisha, and I think Christina just raised her hand as well. Aisha, you have a question? Aisha, are you still there?
She's muted.
I was muted. Thank you. My question is in relation to what is being done on the case management side to have people who help parents and children navigate all of these different agencies, and where there's overlap to address some of the pitfalls that occur. I do a lot of advocacy in this area. I have to say that as a community board member, at times, I'm the former chair of Housing and Human Services for the board. At times when I have stepped in and made contact with some of the agencies, including legal aid, the response has been very receptive and helpful. I really do appreciate that, and I encourage my board members to avail themselves of that opportunity to advocate for people in our district that are being impacted in that way. However, I do see that in many instances, there are ways in which the way that the system functions is the obstacle that exists. It's not so much that the program as it exists bars people from accessing services. I'm sorry. So it's not that the program as it exists is a barrier, but that the function of the program when there are problems becomes the obstacle. And those obstacles I've seen put people in grave circumstances, even where they could have been prevented from becoming homeless, they end up being homeless. One instance that I can give for an example is where checks to prevent eviction were sitting on a desk for 3 months. That family was homeless for less than that, which means that the checks existed before they got evicted. That's just one example. Also within the domestic violence arena, where actions by the HRA office put the family in imminent danger, where the person that the family was living in fear from was given the information about where they were located. So I've had to have the controller's office step in to support. What ended up happening in that situation is they also had a landlord that was waiting to give them an apartment using one of the vouchers. However, the glitch that happened that exposed their address also made it seem as if they had somewhere where they were living. And what ended up happening is they were not receiving the documentations because it was going to the address that it should not have been going to, and their case went into sanction status, and then they were unable to avail themselves of the opportunity with the landlord to use that voucher. So my question is, what is being done about those types of circumstances that are putting people in risk, specifically people from our district? Because when I'm telling these stories, I'm talking about people in our midst, right? That we as Community Board 12 members are responsible to. And also, I would like to hear more about the specific data where our district is concerned. I know that at one point I had gone to the new school, had an event in regards to segregation within the school system, which at that point I learned of the impacts of homelessness in our specific schools. One of the schools in our district was highlighted. I passed that information on to Faye. Faye moved very quickly, and that is how we got the first event about school homelessness. So much credit to Faye for that great work. However, my understanding from a New York Times article is that now we are at, where it was 82,000 pupils in New York City, we're at 100,000. What portion of that is CB12 students? And our students are not only going to school within our district, they're going to schools outside of our district, some of which I learned had as much as 50% of students that were homeless. And that's something that impacts not only the homeless students, but it impacts the students who are not homeless because of those dynamics that come into play. This is something that I find very disheartening. What can we do to address the whole situations that many of these people are experiencing? Many times the dynamics within all the different agencies that they have to work with become very difficult to navigate when they're all working in silos. What can we do to create systems where the whole situation is being addressed and we take some of this burden off of these families. Thank you.
Aisha. Do any of the panelists have a quick response, or?
I think the siloing is a problem we actually all talk about a lot. And I think someone mentioned actually on the chat, and we haven't really talked about this either, but always centering, the voices and experiences of people who are going through the actual issues is so important, as opposed to always, coming to kind of other experts. And I think how you just described that is why that's so important, and frankly why community boards are incredibly important in New York City for getting people help that they need, because it could kind of help break down those artificial barriers that continue to exist, because I agree with you that that's a huge problem. I don't know that I have a good solution for that, other than, like anything else, like good organizing around making like enough voices raising up in unison about an issue often is the thing that gets something changed. I mean, Mayor de Blasio is obviously very sensitive to what's in the media. So like if it's loud enough that it gets in the media and he hears about it, sometimes that's enough to get things shifted. But the silo issue is one that I think is going to take someone who's an incredibly good manager a good manager in the mayor's seat to really be able to like break that down. Cause that's just like, I mean, I'm not going to ask Randy to reflect on this because he's like in it, but I think people inside are trying to like break those walls down where they exist. And it's just really hard to do. I think even basic things like computer systems don't talk to each other, It's hard to like share data and information, which is, we know, super important nowadays. So, but I think there's like a surprisingly large number of people, even in government, who would agree with you that needs to be shifted. And maybe there's a way to unite all of us in making that happen.
And I don't think it's a secret. I think that definitely is the goal, especially I can speak for DYCD. That has been our goal since Commissioner Chung has come on board, is to break down silos, not only external, but internal. The prior administrations, everybody worked in silos. So this is probably the first time that we're trying to communicate with people. And sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not easy, because you have so many different funding streams and, people who you have to respond to, that you have to try to be careful, as well as not to break any confidence in terms of information of the young people that you're serving. You want to make sure that information is not just sent to everybody. So those are definitely things that we at DYCD have worked with. That's why we're doing more work with our sister agencies, and we've created many different MOUs, memorandums of understanding, so that we can make sure that we share that data amongst each other, so that it doesn't make it difficult for a youth who's receiving services with us to go somewhere else and have to start from scratch in terms of giving all of that information, where if the systems were talking, it would make it more expeditious for them to receive services, as well as sometimes when they're within our system, not having to go into another system to get a benefit or a resource. So trying to border those things so that it work. But it's a work in progress, trust me. It's definitely something that we were working on, and the pandemic slowed things up, but we'll see what the next administration brings. But I think if the staff that are in the work now will continue the great stuff that they've trying to do and not stop it. So I definitely hear you. I wish Iris was here, because maybe she could provide you with some of the information with respect to numbers. She was our DOE panelist, but maybe we can get your questions about certain data or certain information numbers to her, and maybe she can respond to you later.
Perfect.
Thank you. And I'll give Christina the virtual floor again.
Thank you, guys. I'll make this as quick as possible. Actually, my first question, I have two quick questions. My first one is in reference to data. I wanted to know, what are the top 3 ways that the youth are finding out about your programs? That's my number 1 question. And number 2 is, mental health can be a taboo in many communities. So I'm just curious to know, what are your organizations doing to demystify this topic to engage the youth? Thank you.
I'm in here. Thank you for those questions, Christina. So as far as for us, and actually it's a little bit also answering Aisha's question, because I was really thinking about what you were saying. And I'm so glad, Beth, that you talked about the youth voice, because I think for us, it really has been a lot of creating the space and the environment where the young people have the power to express themselves, right? And to feel that they can come to a place where they're supported and also exposed to what are the issues of concern. And in providing that space, a lot of times now that we've experienced is that they are telling their friends about us. So they're bringing their friends to our programs. You know, since COVID hit, we did turn everything virtual. And as many, I think, youth CBOs and youth services have experienced, getting that engagement up for, you know, on the virtual platforms can be a little tricky, but I also do think that there is some beauty in the fact that this is a generation that is quite tech savvy, are living on their phones quite a bit. And I think this has been a very interesting opportunity that we've been trying to take advantage of making a space that is for them, made by them, led by them. And so in a lot of ways, yeah, that has been one of the key reasons why they'll even come and check us out. The other piece of that, though, is you know, actual tangible opportunities. And so we had the fortune this past summer, for instance, to launch a paid summer internship program. You know, I think there were a lot of different pockets of opportunities that were sprouting up. But for us, you know, that really was another way in which we honestly looked at these issues from, again, that prevention perspective of empowering our young people to be a bit more aspirational, to really think that, you know, their lot in life is not their lot in life, that there is more that they can really be trying to pursue, and, you know, with the supports of mentors, adults, and also peers, you know, to be able to let them live out that potential that they have. And so I would say that, you know, in that, I think raising up really this next generation of movement makers, you know, I think it was said earlier also how critical on the political landscape it will be to advocate for different policies and really demand change to happen with upcoming administrations. I really do believe that it's the voices of our young people that are going to come out loud and proud. But I also do recognize that for a lot of our young people, they don't even know where to begin, or they don't even realize this is an issue that truly affects them. And so those are the types of spaces that we've been trying to create, at least with our team.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
You know, I'll just say I'm sure I'm still looking to figure out where to begin. But yes, thank you so much, Sharon. I realize I have already pushed this panel 10 minutes past 9. I've been asked to just give one person more a question. Olga, are you there?
I do need to, Mr. Miranda, I do need to sign off now, though. Sorry about that. But thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everybody.
Thank you, Daniel. Olga no habla español. Olga Cornelio, ella no habla, yo creo que ella no habla. Ella habla inglés. Ok, Olga.
Ajá. Dígame.
Usted pidió que tenía una pregunta o exponer alguna situación.
Sí, yo quería exponer un problema que me está pasando.
¿Te podría ser lo más breve posible, por favor? Explíquenos.
Ok, yo quería, buenas noches primero. Quería exponerle un caso que me está pasando que yo tengo un niño, yo soy una madre soltera y tengo un niño hace 3 años durmiendo con él en el hall de la casa de mi hermano, porque no podemos estar, ellos no nos pueden tener porque no cabemos todos en la casa. Estamos en una situación que yo fui a solicitar entrada a un Chester. No me dieron entrada porque yo estoy peleando la custodia de él y con la pandemia ahora mismo está todo parado, todos los casos. Y tengo tanto problema porque necesito un lugar para estar con él. Y fui aquí, apliqué a una organización porque en el Chester no me dieron entrada porque yo tenía que tener la custodia full del niño. Entonces fui al 1981 de aquí del Bronx, de la oficina de City Head. Me dieron un voucher de $1,300 para ayuda de un apartamento para estar con él. Entonces ningún landlord lo quiere porque dicen que no están cogiendo esos programas y me han dado mucha prórroga porque no lo están cogiendo porque es muy poco. Yo le digo que yo tengo un parqué para pagar la diferencia. No me lo quieren aceptar como quieren. Yo estoy exponiendo este caso. A ver, ¿qué me podrían ustedes, a dónde podría yo dirigirme o cómo me podrían ayudar para este caso? Porque de verdad, mi hermano no puede tener y estamos durmiendo una noche donde mi hermano, otra donde mi hermana y así. Y no podemos estar así con este frío. Aquí en la casa somos 10 personas y no cabemos. Y ellos me tienen aquí con él, ya usted sabe, por caridad. A ver qué ustedes me podrían decir. Ahora mismo también tengo el niño con depresión porque en los estudios tampoco se me concentra por la situación que estamos viviendo. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Olga. Yo lo voy a decir en inglés ahora mismo, ¿ok? So she was just mentioning that she has been looking to essentially get into housing for herself and her child. She received a City FEPS voucher. I believe she mentioned it was roughly around $1,300. Part of the issues with the FEPS vouchers is that oftentimes they don't necessarily provide enough funding for getting an apartment. That $1,300, especially if it's perhaps for a 2-bedroom, it might not necessarily be enough. The landlords have, also been specifically mentioning that. I'm trying to translate everything. I'm remembering everything. She was also mentioning that the landlord did not want to accept the voucher. Typically, that's a common case, and so she was asking if perhaps I would assume maybe this might be LAS, but please inform me better here from the panelists.
Sure.
Who might be able to assist with this sort of situation.
And if I may, the typical case here is in which the city is telling this family, this single mother with a child, you already heard that he's basically highly depressed, in which she applied to be in a shelter because the court has not actually have not yet approved the foster application that she already it's already in court because of the COVID. So she went to the shelter didn't allow her to stay. Instead, they refer her to an agency. The agency gave her a voucher. The voucher it's about $1,300, I think, and the agency expect that for that amount she will be able to get 2-bedroom apartment for $1,300, which realistically speaking, she has been able to find several apartments, but no landlord. It's have an apartment, 2-bedroom apartment for $1,300.
Not even a studio.
So allow me, please. So then, and in theory, the city is say, we help you, but it's up to you to find the apartment. Now, The thing is that she's willing to do a co-payment, but then the agency doesn't allow her to do the co-payment. Neither the landlord would allow her to do co-payment. So in between, you see the situation here?
Yeah,
In theory,
I can answer the question, and you're not going to like the answer, so I'm just going to preface that up front. Okay. And I will also say, like, I can't be giving like individuals legal advice, particularly in a public setting. There's like zero confidentiality. This is a recorded public session. It's probably best to not have individual cases brought up here, but I can speak generally to these issues, which is that first of all, unfortunately, the way that the regulations work, you cannot have anyone in foster care also in shelter. So you can't be in shelter and a foster parent at the same time, officially through the foster care system. Has existed as a problem for a long time, and we've been working on it, and it has not been resolved in a way. So that's kind of issue number one, because it means that shelter is not an available option. Now, some religious shelters may be an option. I'll just throw that out there. I don't know, there's not an eligibility process, and there aren't as many for families, but if you can find someone who's able to help house the family for a period of time, that might be helpful. But with a City FEPS voucher, there are set amounts, and you cannot pay the difference if the voucher does not cover the amount. It's a rule, again, a lot of us don't like. A lot of us argued against it when they were creating the City FEPS vouchers, but that's not like just unique to this situation, which is why a lot of advocates are pushing to have the amount increased because it's not enough. And I know that part of what's complicating this too is when you're a foster parent, the child has to have their own bedroom, which is why you need a 2-bedroom, and you can't just get maybe perhaps a smaller place, which I agree with Guillermo, is you can't even find a studio, for that amount of money, let alone a 2-bedroom. The best advocacy that I know has happened has been where people have been able to convince a landlord, because frankly, I think someone else knows the landlord, and the communities come together to be like, can you house this person? Because they're very close to the amount of money, and it would be, that things like that have happened, but it's not there's not a good answer to this question, like it's, you to be a foster parent, you do have to live in an independent place, and you do have to have both of those bedrooms. It is true. Now you can be a resource in other ways, but having worked a period of time with young people in foster care, like I know that's like not actually getting to any kind of solution. So I'm sorry, I don't have a good kind of answer generally to give. I believe that that this has been shared, this issue with maybe even this particular person has been shared at legal aid. And I don't know if there's a way we can reconnect kind of offline to see if there's anything else, but that we can do, brainstorming wise, because again, I'm not a housing attorney, but that's kind of this is what I spend most of my day doing, is giving bad news, unfortunately, about how systems are not working together to make stuff help.
This is very, difficult.
If I might jump in really quick, one of the things that she said in Spanish was that she has spoken to landlords that tell her they will not accept that program. That is illegal. And in that instance, what she could do is go to the Commission on Human Rights to report to them that there's discrimination happening where her voucher is concerned. And they may be able to help her open up doors that have been closed for her. So, and this is actually the importance of us having translators actively translating in our meetings, because that's a very key aspect of the story that she told. So.
Apologies on my end. I'm trying to translate, but
no, it's not your fault, Ariel. But I just wanted to give light to that.
Ayusha, you can repeat that in Spanish for her. She speaks Spanish.
Sí, lo que estaba diciendo es que los leyes están puestos para prevenir que un landlord te diga que ese programa que no lo aceptan. Están supuestos a aceptarlo. Esto es una forma de pagar tu renta que es completamente legal. Si usted comunica con el Commission de Human Rights, que tenemos un miembro de nuestra board, es parte de esa organización, y podemos darte más información sobre ese caso, en que si ellos te están diciendo eso, que te pueden ayudar quizá a abrir más puertas con esa situación.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So, señora Cornelio, basically, nosotros vamos a darle un seguimiento, pero por el tiempo quizá no podemos seguir elaborando, pero en cuanto a lo que dijo mi compañera aquí, Miss Olivier, yo me pondré en contacto con usted para darle seguimiento a esto fuera de toda esta conversación. Gracias por exponer su caso.
Muchas gracias por atenderme y gracias a todos. Que pasen buenas noches. Ojalá puedan ayudarme.
Gracias. De nada. So I realize it is 9:20. I want to thank the panelists so very much for staying with us. We cannot say enough about how helpful it is to be learning from the experts, to be learning from the individuals that are dealing with so many of really the youth that are going to be dealing with a lot of the concerns that we've brought up here tonight. You know, again, we cannot say thank you enough. I can just do thank you, but it's definitely more meaningful than I think we can ever express. So thank you.
I need to add it all because this is not, yes, for the panel might be just basically just the end, but I believe we have also to give the opportunity to the community for any announcement. And, you know, but let's then conclude with our panel. And in my case as well, I join, you know, your statement. And on my behalf as well, and as well the rest of my colleagues, I deeply wanted to thank you for your time, for sharing, you know, volunteer your time basically, because you don't get paid for this, obviously. And I'm deeply appreciative. And also I wanted just to say that I'm looking forward to continue this conversation. As I already had expressed, you know, myself on behalf of my committee, we're going to be writing some follow-up, and I hope you be part of that small report that we're going to share with the community. More to come, you know, off this meeting. So I deeply thank you, Beth, Randy, Sharon, Ms. Bettino. Thank you so very, very, very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks for having me.
And for the rest of the colleagues,
everyone.
Good night, all.
All right.
Good night.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Take care. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
So,
Carlos, you want to stay? So we have some business. I don't know if the community may wanted to have any announcements. So this is the opportunity to come up with any announcement that you may have.
yes,
Ariel, you want to continue?
yeah, I'm hoping we didn't lose our committee members. It was only for the panelists we were referring to. But so Faye and I had been discussing trying to find a resolution that we could bring together between both committees that are seeking to address many of the concerns that, I mean, I could only think was going to be brought up tonight. Of course, there are always, you know, countless issues that I don't even think could have been brought up within, you know, a 2-hour frame or 2 hour, 20 minutes, stealing some time. And so I put together a drafting of language that I thought might be aiding to really the concerns that we have heard about tonight, but also potentially put forward some new possible ideas that might address many of these issues, plus some others. And if anything, I'd like to just share what the language is that I've put together. Of course, I want to make sure that everyone knows that this is not at all the final language. I want folks to be more than happy to be involved in editing and also adding more language if possible. Okay, I'm just going to put the draft up on the screen, doing screen share. Give me one moment here.
So are you basically bringing a new business so we can open up the floor?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
I say goodbye.
Blanca, you're welcome to stay.
I'm gonna have to leave, but I thank you.
No, we thank you deeply, you know, for your time and your knowledge as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to hear this Ariel, but I have to, sorry.
Are you sharing your screen, Ariel? Are you sharing your screen, or you were
All
going
right.
to read it?
Yeah, I'm going to share it now.
Thank you,
I was,
Casino.
you know, filled with this moment here, but thank you. Okay, so.
Ariel, can you possibly state the title of your new business, the business that you wanted to present?
Yes, so I'm introducing a resolution or draft form of a resolution. And what I've just labeled it for now is just the resolution to combat youth homelessness and mental health disparities in the midst of COVID. You know, I'll go essentially reading through some of just the language, pulling from the statement that was given earlier tonight, as well as some of the items that I've also found through that research. I've written, whereas the state and city is required by law to provide shelter to everyone who needs it, whereas homelessness in New York City has...
Allow me to interrupt you 1 second. What we need to do is we are going to call for a motion to enter into a debate to discuss this after somebody seconded, and then we're going to present the concept. But so far you are presenting or bringing a business, which is a possible resolution in support to combat the youth homelessness and mental health disparity. Is that the new business you are presenting to this committee, right?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So let's call for a motion. And right now I'm calling for a motion so we can go into the new business that Ariel is presenting, a possible resolution to combat youth homelessness and mental health disparity in the midst of COVID. So can we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Aisha seconded. Okay, now the motion is on the table. Let's go into the debate. Let's discuss. Go ahead, Ariel, please.
Can we see the, oh, sorry, go ahead, go through it. I was just gonna ask if we could see the bottom, but it looks like you're gonna start from the top.
Yeah. I'm going through the entire thing here. So just continuing along, whereas homelessness in New York City has reached the highest levels since the Great Depression, whereas over the course of city fiscal year 2019, 132,660 different homeless children, men and women slept in New York City shelters, which included over 44,300 homeless children. Whereas in August 2020, there were 57,660 homeless people, including 12,866 homeless families, with 19,006 homeless children sleeping each night in a New York City shelter. Whereas the Coalition for the Homeless State of the Homeless 2020 report shows that Governor Cuomo is failing to address homelessness, most disturbingly by allowing thousands of individuals to be released from hospitals, jails, and nursing homes directly to shelters. Whereas in 2018, more than 3,400 individuals were released from state prisons directly to shelters in New York City, and between 2015 to 2018, more than 15,000 such individuals were sent to city shelters by the state, whereas the state did not adequately address housing needs as psychiatric centers similar to that of the Allen Pavilion were closed, leaving many people vulnerable to homelessness, whereas 1 in every 100 babies born in New York City last year was brought home from the hospital to a shelter, whereas the public assistance shelter allowance set by the state has been historically inadequate, leaving those who are homeless or at risk of homelessness without permanent affordable housing options. And whereas 60% of New Yorkers say they don't have enough emergency savings to cover at least 3 months worth of expenses like food and rent, while nearly 20% of New York City residents already live below the poverty line, earning less than $24,300 for a family of 4. Whereas the Coalition for the Homeless estimates keeping a family in their home saves taxpayers $68,422 per year in shelter costs. Therefore, be it resolved, Community Board 12 Manhattan calls upon Congress to enact the HEROES Act passed by the House of Representatives that would set aside $100 billion in emergency rent relief, $10 billion of which would go to New York under the typical formulas used for such programs. Be it resolved, Community Board 12 Manhattan calls upon the state of New York to accelerate the pace of production of the 20,000 units of supportive housing pledged by the governor in 2016 by completing them within 10 rather than 15 years and fully funding the construction and operation of the remaining 14,000 units. Be it resolved, Community Board 12 Manhattan calls upon the state of New York to implement the Home Stability Support Program to create a state-funded long-term rent subsidy for households receiving public assistance who are homeless or at risk of losing their housing due to eviction, domestic violence, or hazardous housing conditions. Be it resolved, Community Board 12 Manhattan, the state of New York, to reverse the harmful cuts to New York City's emergency shelter system that resulted in the state shortchanging the city by hundreds of millions of dollars over the past 6 years and share equally with the city in the non-federal cost of sheltering families and individuals. Be it resolved, Community Board 12 Manhattan calls upon the state of New York to conduct further oversight of hospitals, jails, and other institutions to prevent inappropriate discharges to shelters and the streets. Be it resolved, Community Board 12 calls upon the state of New York to adequately fund community-based programs, housing programs, for individuals with psychiatric disabilities. Be it resolved, Community Board 12 in Manhattan calls upon the state of New York to ensure effective reentry planning for individuals being released from state prisons in order to identify viable housing options prior to each individual's scheduled release date. Be it resolved, Community Board 12 Manhattan calls upon the city of New York to accelerate the timeline for the creation of 15,000 city-funded supportive housing units by scheduling their completion by 2025 rather than 2030. Be it resolved, Community Board 12 of Manhattan calls upon the city of New York to allocate at least 3/4 of tenant-based Section 8 vouchers to be made available each year to homeless households so they can exit shelters. Be it resolved, Community Board 12 of Manhattan calls upon the city of New York to increase the city rental assistance voucher amount to fair market rate. Be it resolved, Community Board 12 of Manhattan calls upon the city of New York to expand access to the city rental assistance vouchers. Be it resolved, Community Board 12 of Manhattan calls upon the city of New York to create an impartial appeals process for individuals applying for supportive housing. Be it resolved, Community Board 12 of Manhattan calls upon the city of New York to allocate greater funding in fiscal year 2021 and 2022 budget, I should edit, to help subsidize the increased production of housing mandated under local law 19, that which was mentioned earlier, by the way, which will require the city to allocate a minimum of 15% of apartments to homeless New Yorkers in new city subsidized buildings over 40 units. And be it resolved, Community Board 12 of Manhattan calls upon the city of New York to greatly reduce reliance on the single one-time assistance, better known as SODA program, and help families move out of shelters with long-term rent subsidies, including Section 8 vouchers. With that, I know it's a mouthful, but I hope you've been able to grasp some of these items here.
Wow, we have a big chunk to digest. Wonderful. Yes. Well, if I may, I just wanted to, in the title, let's go. Can you zoom it so we can see it? Okay.
Does that help?
What it says, resolution to come back. Okay, to come back youth. Well, I guess the title, yes. I saw accustomed to see resolution in support to, okay, but this is fine. But a general statement that or suggestion that I have is maybe we want to, or you want to consider it to consolidate several of those, whereases, and so to make this like more compact. That would be, I think that would be very, very important.
So,
but anyway, let's allow Maria. Raise her hands, and yes, Maria. You unmute yourself, Maria, please.
And sorry, Faye, if you can just let me know who has their hands raised, because I can't see it in the screen.
Oh, okay, sure. Maria did. But Maria, we cannot hear you.
Trying.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Maria.
Okay, I'm okay now?
Yes, we can hear you. Very good.
Yeah. With all due respect, this resolution makes responsibility from the state overall and then the city. I think my recommendation will be to split it, because we are talking about Cuomo, we're talking about the city, and the numbers really. I think that our responsibility right now is Community Ward 12, the needs for the people, the children and the families within our community, because not every area, there are 50 counties in New York that Cuomo is responsible for. So I think that maybe there's too many whereases and too many being resolved, and no one is going to pay. To tell you the truth, I'm sitting on the state committee. This goes to the floor of the state committee and they're going to send it back. It's lengthy, and we need to make sure that you know, there's something specific here that they can be addressed immediately or in short time. I suppose that when we talk about housing, building housing forever and ever, and you know that we're going to be listening for you know, elected officials saying there is no place here to, you know, to build housing, because I mean the real estate industry is controlling our political life. So I think that's my recommendation. Let's see how we can, you know, that could be, it's a good resolution, but I think that we need to make a specific things for our area and then for the overall problem that we have with homeless families and children, and then the shelter. That's what I have to say. I have no problems with the resolution, but I think it needs to be split. I need to, you know, to be more concise. Certain things, Community Board 12 said, and then there is other things saying the state responsibility and or the city responsibility overall.
If I may quickly, Maria has a great point. I understand, but I also understand, and I wanted to actually share this. Remember that in terms of funding, in terms of which I think is actually what Ariel's intention is, basically to create some kind of connection, looking at the repercussion that the state has on the city. And I think that bringing all this data from the state in combination with the city, he may not, or we may not necessarily acknowledge all this, you know, data. But I think that making the state or making some references to give credibility to this resolution and turn on what the state is saying, I think is highly important. So I don't think that the idea to avoid completely mention the state is necessarily something that we wanted to do. But let's see what the rest of the county have to say. But you have a valid point, you know, in your own opinion, Maria. I appreciate it. Go ahead, Yo.
Can I add something?
Sorry, I just wanted to provide the point of reference. So it is broken down. So you're looking, for instance, if you're looking at this portion here, you're getting the main whereases, right? And this data is going to be focusing on New York City. You know, you can't necessarily get much more specific if you're going to try and ask, because again, you know, this is not going to come out that way. You can't get it by a community district based on the information that you're going to find right now. Maybe you can ask that of a city agency to deliver that to us, but that's not going to be available. And in reference to the resolves, I want to point out that they specifically cite who is being called upon for each. So it lays out the state of New York, and then you go further down, you'll see the city of New York, So there are specific items that go to each of them.
I'm not sure. I can't see it.
You know, very sure. Ariel, I think that, you know, you are right. I mean, it's a nice long resolution that we are talking about.
Yes.
When we are talking about billions of dollars allocated to New York, it's the responsibility of each politician, and I'm going to call politician, elected official, have to lobby for how much money is going to come to their district. This is my focus, is that it has to be, some of the things have to be split, and some of the things also have to go into our budget priorities, because we need housing. We cannot force landlord to just accept vouchers because we're telling them to do. They also have some ways of controlling their property, and that's why they put a lot of money, financial help, to elected officials. So this is something, when we talk about report by 2016 about housing, this is 2020, and still they don't know where they're going to be housing, where they're going to be the money allocated to shelters. Sheltering families in hotels is not the answer. So
I don't
we
think
have to
that's
talk about long-term resolutions and short-term solutions. So that's it. But
Maria.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, no, that's not what's in here.
I know, but that's it. But it's not there, but it is there, because you're talking also now, you're talking about asking Congress to enact,
Yeah, can I
things
add
like that.
something?
I mean,
I'm
this
Faith,
is
can I
one thing
add
on the
something?
other.
Am I?
Absolutely. Go ahead, please.
I'm not sure if I'm next or not. I can't see the list. Is there a list? Am I?
Faye, I think you're the only one. I can't look at the screen to.
I can look at it. Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just jump in. I would say, Ariel, I commend the work. This is obviously a great well thought out resolution. I would agree with Maria that I think it's important to maybe think of having separate resolutions, maybe one that's focused on the issue at the city level, and then maybe having one that focuses on the state level. I didn't see the correlation. I understand where you were going with the HEROES Act reference, but I think that may be a little bit too complex and intermingling the states, the city, state, and federal issue. That's my recommendation as well, to maybe consider having a resolution that focuses on the issue at the city level, and then one that focuses on the state level.
Yes, but what I was saying is basically, and be brief, is that if what would be the objection of he bringing some data and do, I would say maybe fair comparison at state level and city level, because I think the data that he wanted to use at a state level references, I don't know, maybe references about budget, I think that I saw necessarily, I mean, he don't have to elaborate in the whole resolution about the state on concentrated, because this is a city issue that we're trying here to, to defend. But I think that if he can use any data and internal statistic that can be helpful and bring more credibility or more weight onto this resolution from the state level, I don't see exactly why. But anyway, yes, we all entitled to our opinion, but yes, the resolution should focus more into the city. Yes, I agree. But I also can see his intention in bringing some credibility and kind of bringing some information at the state level.
Yeah, I don't agree. I'm not disagreeing with that. Not at all.
Yes, and look, regardless what happened today, we can always bring this to the executive committee, and there we also can have many opinions as well. But yes, let's see how much we can advance here, because this is very important. And Katie, yes, thank you, and Maria also for your for your input. Yes.
No.
Go ahead.
Aria, can you just scroll it down so we can see the last few resolutions? It's hard to see everything on the screen.
Yeah, no, I understand.
This is
but
too
yeah,
long. Yes.
Sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, that definitely is too long. We don't have to go through. We can consolidate this, definitely. But this, let's have the rest of the Cali to speak.
If I might, in my opinion, as Ariel read this resolution, the more proud I became of the work that he's been doing on this board and this resolution. I feel like what it does is it sets the groundwork for the fact that many of these things are things that have been in place already. They are things that people have been advocating for years. They're things that there are plans already in place for that need to be amended to take into consideration the current situation that we find ourselves. They are things that range all the way from the federal government down to the city level, and that is why they're all included in here. I think the beauty of it is it shows in a very broad way all of the ways in which, if we moved in these areas, the impact that can be delivered to the people that are in detriment right now. The only thing that I would do to change it is to add to it the fact that this board has also advocated for community land trust, and the fact that there is a group in our community that has been awarded to participate in a pilot program in order to be educated and hopefully bring to fruition a community land trust to also afford more housing opportunities to those of differing levels of income. I would just ask that that be added to the resolution as another be it resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. Ariel?
Yeah. So I mean, it's clearly right. There's so many pieces to this. Well, I think maybe in terms, I guess we should probably just go into the individual pieces here to try and get consensus on really the entire piece here. But if perhaps maybe it might, maybe it might make sense here to just cut out some of the areas where it's mentioning the larger groups and just specifically focus on keeping that which is referring to children. Maybe that might make more sense here to just cut down a bit in these two whereases, and I can keep going down just item by item if you'd like. Does that make sense?
Yes, and the good thing is that I'm not sure whether or not we would be able to pass this resolution today, but I think that it's a good idea that we, before this meeting is over or be adjourned, that we collectively agree in whatever amendments or friendly amendments we receive. But you brought the business, and you tell us.
I have a point of clarification. What is the difference between the 132,000 different homeless children, men? So that includes the men and women? Is that what that larger number is? And then the 44,000 is just children?
Yeah. And that was specifically, I was having like these moments too while I was going over all this data. But yes, it's referring to over the entire span of that fiscal year. So like the reason why I'll also just mention, like, you'll see, like, you'll be thinking about like, why is there such a huge difference between this one and you're looking at this number here. It's because it's going to be referencing the month. This one is just in that.
The cumulative over time of different people. I think that the 132,000 is an important number as well.
Yeah. So yeah, well, I'm happy to keep it. I mean, yeah, I can just try and cut it down to keep.
Did you accept the friendly amendment that she had posed, and Maria as well?
Sorry, yes. Keeping the 132,000. I'm sorry, you said, Maria, you wanted to.
I think she's referencing the community land trust clause.
But my point has been always to not to dilute the resolution as is written. It's just that I think that we should not mix. These are high numbers. These are very high numbers that we are pointing out. It's extremely important. Aisha, when you were the chair of the housing committee, I think that you have some resolutions already that passed and that were sent down to city council. I don't know what the action that if they took an action, but anything that you have sent down that was approved by the board is also included on this resolution. I mean, I hate to.
That was actually my request. I was trying to recall other ones that may not have already been addressed that should be. Another is right now the homes guarantee is also being reviewed in the state legislature as well. So, I mean, I just want to say I appreciate the spirit in which Ariel has written this, which is to take a wholesome look at all of the vast efforts that have been done in this field that we are overdue with, considering that we're looking at the amount of people that we see homeless right now and who are being impacted, especially in the midst of a pandemic. And while this may be 2 pages, we have had resolutions that have been 15 pages. Let's remind ourselves. I do not think that 2 pages is too much for people to review for such a crisis.
Yeah.
There were some numbers in there, Ariel, that you mentioned pertaining to formerly incarcerated people being released back into the community, but the data was from 2018, I believe. Maybe there's a way to add or strengthen that section, because that is an ongoing crisis as well. And that's what I believe that perhaps could be, it could be its own separate issue within itself, like those who are formerly incarcerated coming back to the community, as well as we have Edgecombe, state prison in our community as well. And there's talk of more shelters coming to our community, and there's talk of releasing more people from prisons. And so I think that there's so much more that could be added from that perspective, that if there was more time, or there was a separate resolution on homelessness pertaining to the prison issue. I also, was listening earlier talking about young people with homelessness, which is a huge issue, obviously, but there's like this huge connection with one of your points earlier you made about those who are in shelters are more likely to not graduate from high school. But there's also data that shows that those who don't graduate from high school are more inclined to enter the prison pipeline, which connects to this whole issue that we're discussing. So I think there's a way to maybe fine tune, maybe break out some of the issues. I mean, I'm happy to tackle homelessness from a perspective of, public safety in my committee in the future. But I do think there's more that could be added, and maybe there's something that is being lost, because I only saw that one sentence pertaining to prisoners being released into homeless shelters. And there could be so much more that could be added, in my opinion.
And I also wanted to add, and this is a good example, the case of the lady. You have people that, they've been given this basically full, voucher with the idea that they can get an apartment, and they go in circle. That's something that I think that we should mention. Yes, because there is a serious problem with the city giving voucher to people, and when in reality they can do nothing. It's just like a bandage.
That is included in the reso.
I didn't see it.
The fact that I think Ariel is highlighting it now.
I'm sorry.
The fact
So
that
I'm sorry. I have
to be raised to market rate is included. Also, I want to remind people of standard practice, which is at times we vote on resolutions because the spirit of the resolution is not going to change by us updating the data in the resolution. And so I feel like there was certainly time in order before the general meeting for instance, anything that says 2018 to be updated to the most current date of information that we have so that it can be accurate. And we also change things on the general meeting floor.
Exactly.
I move that we vote on this resolution.
All right. So let's then let's prepare then to take the vote. All right. Let's call the voting. So do we have quorum, number one? How many of us?
That's a good question.
Yes, we need to make sure that we have, there is 13 participants. We have Maria, we have Isha, we have Christina, myself, Ariel, we have Kerry. Kerry, you're still with us, right?
I am still here. Yes, I am.
Yes.
I actually don't know what is protocol when we have a joint meeting in regards to.
Well, we just added up. Like in our case, it have to be 5 people on our side, I guess. And what about yours and your side? I mean, I assume that
the combination of quorum.
The combination of with the requirement. And my side, we need to have 5 people.
Yeah, on mine we have 4, and thankfully you have just enough.
So on your side you have quorum. What about an hour? Christina. Let's see. Let me see the list.
It's Paradise.
Paradise, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, we have Paradise, we have Maria, we have, let's see, we have Glennis, you're still with us.
I'm here.
Mama say yes, we have quorum. And my side, yes, we have quorum. And we have Guillermo Perez as well. Yes.
Great.
Yes, we do have quorum. So then let's call the vote. Okay. All right, let's start with your committee, Ariel. So those in favor say yes. Either no.
May I say something?
No, yes.
This is a city, this is a resolution that's going to the city. So it had to be a individual vote by the members of the committee, by the public members and the community, you know, people who are, you know.
Committee member first, board member second.
Then the other committee had to do the same thing because it's a city resolution.
Yeah, but we're gonna call the vote, the members first.
Right.
The community board member second and public member last.
And I will tell you, let me just point out information. The strength of this resolution is gonna be that the members of the committees voting plus the members of the board that are also attending and voting. So that'll put it more, you know, a strong vote on people will pay attention to this resolution.
All right. So Ariel, can I see the title again? Can you put them on the screen so I can repeat that while I'm calling the vote, please?
And I was actually just about to start counting them down at the bottom.
Just want to see the title.
Yep.
Okay, so now in combination with the Youth and Education Committee and the Housing Human Services Committee, so at this time we are calling the vote for the resolution to combat youth homelessness and mental health disparity in the midst of COVID. All right, those in favor, raise your hand or say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Maria, yes, yes.
Christina says yes.
One at a time. Ariel, yes. Christina?
Yes.
Okay. Paradise?
Yes.
Yes. Curtis?
Yes.
Thank you. Aisha?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see who other member. Ada?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to see some other names. Can you take the out of the screen the resolution so I can see? Let's see other members. Ariel, you already called yes. You say yes, and let's see who else.
I just need to make a point of information. Mariela is trying to put her son to sleep, so she can't vote verbally right now. She has I think raised her hand, however.
So he just fell asleep, so I stepped out the bedroom. So yes, my vote is yes. Thank you.
Who was this? Who was this?
Marielle.
Marielle. Thank you, Marielle. Yes. What about, do we have any other board members? I mean, committee members?
Is Glennis in?
Yes, I voted yes.
Okay, Glennis. Thank you, Glennis. Glennis, yes. Gabriela, do we have Gabriela? I don't think so. No? Anybody else from the committee? Board members? Okay, public members? Guillermo? I cannot hear you. Yes? Can I hear you?
Yes.
Guillermo. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, and Fat say yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and 11. So the yes, okay, the yes got it, and yes, resolution passed anonymously. Thank you so very much. Yes, with me, I say yes. I say yes. 11. All right. All right. So moving forward to the next phase, is there any question that you may have before we adjourn our meeting? No?
Really quick before we go, Faye, I wanted to ask when they were present, but why was there a switch from from Chromebooks to iPads? I'm assuming the cost would be significantly less. And just from a tech perspective, I know some of the issues that exist with the iPad that would not be the case with Chromebook. It's possible that the Chromebook does not afford for some of the other uses that they may need, but I'm just curious about why that is, because clearly that's creating a conflict for some of the students to where they have to bring a bus just to allow for the connectivity that they need specifically with that device. So if we could find out more information about what's happening with that technology, there was an article that came out in the New York Times last month which spoke to that issue as well. So,
well, I can tell you, and you probably saw that reflection, on our budget request. There are schools still in our district that they are still limping with that. They are still waiting. There are many students that are still waiting to on the delivery of the Chromebooks and also, iPads. There is a silent problem that, it's not really, no one is talking about, but I know that many schools are still waiting, for the student to get the Chromebook and the iPads as well, yes.
Okay.
And before you pose a question, I meant to say thank you all, for voting on this resolution and for your inputs. I in particular, Maria would never go silent. Maria, thank you. So I need that formula so I can have that kind of energy that you have. I used to have that when I was younger, but I really envy you on that. All right. So any announcement that we may have that you want to share? I guess.
So
yes.
I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Maria.
Faye, if I may just address a few things that we're following at the Borough President's Office, specifically related to the tech with the DOE. So just, we do collect a lot of the feedback from constituents to bring to them, but in the case to Aisha's question, why they would go with iPads rather than Chromebooks, a lot of it had to do with availability. There was a point at which a lot of schools acquired iPads because a laptop was considered something that was not eligible for the expense funding unless it was in a network lab, and there was an exception made, I believe, when Gail Brewer was in City Council, that allowed for a mobile defined device. All that said, there are so many issues with people, including children in my family, who are being required to use particular websites that are firewalled by DOE devices. So in addition to connectivity, in addition to incompatible devices, you have just really basic decision-making that isn't looking at the whole picture. Why would you require a website to upload assignments or to perform tests and not bother to check first that it wasn't firewalled by the DOE? And so it's really basic things like that where we kind of sit and said, the school closed for months. We expected that there were all these things. It was for that reason, to do all of that planning, to do all of that refining, and it just didn't happen. So we continue to be on that. We have had the DOE superintendents, executive superintendents, chancellor's offices at our borough board many times. You can look up on our social media channels to rewatch those hearings. We continue to take them to task. If you guys have more specific questions, we can pass them along. It's very disappointing. It's a huge roadblock on top of many, many roadblocks our community is facing.
Thank you. I know it's really sad that at this point, we already in November, heading, pretty soon December, and it's really shameful that you have students that still they don't have their equipment. I personally been in contact prior even where we started with the budget request, speaking to different principals and going over, the problems that they have and things that they need, because every year I visited many of them asking, what are their priorities, what kind of need, they want our community to advocate. And I know that there are several schools that they are going through a very, difficult situation when it comes to, equipment for the students. In fact, there was one of the schools that, was telling us that they precisely were in need of 200 of this equipment between Chromebooks and iPads. And Maria said, yeah, but I'm, kind of concerned. Why precisely, 200? But, it's just to tell you that there is a very, problems, a very, I don't know how to even to describe it. It's an urgent need, for the students to get this equipment, but, nobody is really talking about that. So I think
it's an urgent need with many consequences, because as you all know, and we keep fighting against this, I know here you've discussed it, we've discussed it in our office, but Child Protective Services will come and do a truant call on a family that is not connecting because they are truant, they are not attending because they can't connect. And so you have the possibility of having children and families pay legal consequences or have things go on record because of that. And you have all of these, it puts school social work, and it puts, it highlights the need for more social work support. And now, with the healthcare issue, more nursing support in schools. But these are the kind of, I don't call them cracks, because cracks, you can give the excuse that people didn't see them. They are giant chasms through which our community is falling.
Natalie, I was just about to bring that up because I've spoken with a parent. The parent is in Queens that contacted me specifically to say that their child was being marked absent because they were not logging in, but they never received the device. So I'm curious as to how many in our district have been impacted by that. That's a valid point.
Yeah, because of confidentiality issues, obviously Child Protective Services, can't release a lot of information because, if it's the numbers are low, if they identify a certain school, it kind of gives you a hint of what it is. And, some of them decided to stop doing it. But we are talking about the potential of, let's say, a District 75 student being removed from a home and put into a group home with far more risk of contagion.
Yeah.
Because it's not like they can go anywhere else. It is the potential disasters, especially for communities that can't always advocate for themselves, like those who don't speak English or have too many jobs or childcare issues that keeps them from being on top of the bureaucratic details of the school system, and who can keep up with that red tape.
Yeah. And I wanted to add that getting information from the district lately has been very difficult, because prior also to the our budget hearing, I contacted the office and I was trying to get the numbers, in particular in the area of teachers, how many teachers, we have in our district. If they can give us at least a breakdown, how many are doing, in person or in classroom lesson, and also on the other side, like virtual. But, I sent honestly about 4 different requests, and I never got a single answer from no one, including with the superintendent, unfortunately. Reason why, I don't know, but everything is being, very difficult in terms of getting information. And I wanted to say, and this is just a speculation, that maybe because of the atmosphere, political atmosphere right now with all this pandemic, People, for example, principals and even the superintendent, they may be in position that they cannot probably share information unless the DOE chancellor, allow them. So everybody is trying to be very skeptical as to what information they share. So anyway, so it's 10 after 10. Where are my children now? So Natalie, as always, I appreciate, your office supports, and equally, the same you, because you are the face of your office, when it comes to the community board. But we deeply thank you, and we thank you both of, President Gail Brewer and Callis. Thank you so much for your support. Maria, don't change. So I guess at this point, if you don't have any question, I guess that we should join this meeting right now. Are we are we agreed? Seconded? Yes.
Second? No. Third?
Okay. Yes. All right, guys. Thank you so much, and you have a good night.
Great meeting.
Guys. Okay. Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Great meeting.
Good night. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good night, everyone.